with you. Thank you, Lord, that you are a relational God and that your heart is to dwell with man, that we would know you and be fully known by you and dwell forever with you one day in eternity. Thank you, Lord, for providing a way. Lord, as we open up this meeting, I pray that you would be our guide. I pray that we would have hearts and ears and minds that listen, that consider, and that seek to obey your will. And it's in your name we pray. Amen. We'll stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I call to order the workshop for April 22nd, 2025. Welcome, citizens of Clay County. I want to take the opportunity to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to attend today's school board workshop. This workshop is our opportunity as your elected representatives to collaborate openly among ourselves and make decisions that will decide the future direction of our public schools and education of our children here in Clay County. There will be an opportunity for the public to ask questions at the end of the workshop presentation. Questions will be allowed. Public comment will not be allowed. If you wish to ask a question, please fill out a comment card with your question and hand that card to a deputy. Your participation is welcome and appreciated. First this morning, since we have special guests, we're going to go ahead and start with our policy and have Neola come forward and
Good morning, Madam Chairman, board members, Mr. Superintendent. This is our fifth rule development workshop that we've held, and it's an opportunity to review and go over all the proposed policies and the changes. Today we have three chapters: the 6,000s, which is the finance, the 7,000, which is property, and the 8,000, which is operations, including food service, transportation, and school safety. And then we also have policy 90-11, which is the booster club, which was not ready last time when we had our workshop on the 9,000, so that we've added that. And then we also have 10 bylaws that I'd like you to look at today. The reason for that is that the bylaws have been updated since our August workshop on them, so these are new changes to the bylaws we'd like to put in place before the adoption, including notices of meetings and things like that. So if there's no other issue, we can start with the 6,000. I would ask if anybody has any issue they want to discuss or questions. We have on the screen grants, borrowing, cost principles, budget preparation, district budget.
do any board members have any policies in the 6,000 section that you guys wanted to discuss?
I do, but I have to go flip through them real quick.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ms. Skipper, are we going to do, can we do like, I have just a few, but I don't know where they're located in the policy. I have them by just flipping. Can we do like page 0 through 50 and then?
Yeah, we can do that. We do the first 50 pages.
I have some, does anybody, I just have a question on page 8.
Gotta have the policy numbers to put them up.
Yeah, policy number.
6110, grant funds.
Yeah, 6110, grant funds. And I happen to have lost my great glasses that I could see far and close with, so now I'm going to talk without them. So, I guess I just wanted to know, on page 8, we deleted right above grant proposal development, which is at the top. No federal funds received by the district shall be used to develop or distribute materials or operate programs or courses of instruction directed at youth that are designed to promote or encourage sexual activity. B, distribute or aid in the distribution of organized of legal obscene materials. C, provide sex education, I'm paraphrasing. And D, operate a program of contraceptive distribution in schools. I just wasn't sure why we would cross it out, because it just seems like the values that our community would rally behind. And I didn't know if other board members, what you thought about taking that out. I have no problem with it staying in, and if the board thinks it could stay out, but the parameters for me, I just wanted you guys to know, I have no problems with that staying in.
Isn't C and D what we put against in our other policies as far as sex education and stuff?
Yeah.
So that contradicts our other policies that we took out, C and D.
So these are things that we don't provide anyways, it's outdated. So many of these things go against current statute, so they're conflicting. So we took it out because we wouldn't be doing it anyway based on current statute.
And it's somewhere else in our policies that we're not going to do it anyway?
Well, it's Florida statute.
Yeah, so is it in our policy somewhere?
Yes, so the
Yes.
last policies that we did, that we reworded things and then we took certain things
I
out.
know we
and
reworded
stated-
for abstinence, but is the rest of it covered if it's law somewhere else?
I mean, I'm fine with keeping the language. Like, it supports what state statute already says, and if you want to reiterate it, I'm okay with that.
But we don't do C and D, so we couldn't keep that.
It's saying that we won't do these things.
Oh, we won't.
It's saying we
Yeah.
won't.
Okay, I'm sorry.
In particular, B is distribute or organize, distribution by an organization of obscene materials to minors or school grounds. I mean, honestly, that's exactly what our media policy says, and I feel like it should probably apply to all of our funds. I mean, it's not,
Okay. I mean, that's fine as long, yeah.
and if C and D is somewhere else, I don't actually have a problem with those not being on this page, but
I think we just keep it like it is.
Is there an objection to keep these? All right. Okay, so can we keep, that section on page 8 at the top? A, B, C, and D.
A, B, C, and D.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there a subtitle above that?
No federal funds received by the district shall be used to,
It's a grant.
It's under financial management.
were there any others in the first 50 pages?
I'm looking right now.
I don't know about the 50, I've got them by, because I don't have the page number. I'm going back to the red line version.
Well, hold on, I'll tell you what the policy ending is. It is district budget 6233,
Okay,
so anything before that.
6144.
Are you in the red line version or?
Yeah. Under portfolio composition, I'm just wondering why we would have 50% of monies as far as investing by the CFO, why we put a percentage in there. I would think that would be more procedural, that we shouldn't, I mean, the CFO knows at what times money can be put in a money market or whatever. Right. Minor little thing, but just,
27, page 27.
because it's under number 2, portfolio composition, and then on the following page under FDIC insured deposits.
You would remove the 20%?
50,
We're asking why we removed it, doing that, or why we put that.
61 what?
27.
61 127.
That's the policy she's referring to.
Okay.
I'm trying to find a page. Oh, portfolio composition,
Yes,
and it says the chief financial officer will determine the compensation of his portfolio for this type of investment, is that one?
that's in the close proximity. Under, it's under two areas. One is FDIC insured deposits, under H. And then the page prior to that, portfolio composition.
Right, there's several places where it has different percentages based on the type of investment.
Yeah, and I think this is really, the reason we've done it this way is the fact that, of course, that percentage investment, we want to make sure that when we're making the decision, that if for any reason, at least some of those funds are in an investment portfolio. The rest of it, we always want to be able to have that cash around so that we can maintain our operational expenditure.
Yeah,
So
it just
having
seems,
that,
seems odd to have based on maybe that's a high level.
It's a safe percentage, only because I feel like, you know, if there's, well, I feel like operationally, if there's any opportunities where we need to pull cash or do
Right.
anything, you know,
'Cause I
that we
didn't
have
know-
that flexibility of having 50%.
Okay. I didn't know if it was a state, more or less mandate, at 50, and why it was in here as a policy instead of a procedure.
Oh, I see, yeah. No, and keep in mind, a lot of these policies that is in this chapter are all statutorily driven. And many of the districts within the state of Florida follow similar percentages, similar caps on a lot of these types of activities that we are required to do throughout the school year for operating the finance side of the business. So that's why. I'm sure it'll be in the procedure when that's crafted.
And I apologize, I don't know what page number, but it's on identical low bids, which is unusual to begin with. But we've got in there,
Is it the same policy?
it should be. Let's see what the number is. 6320,
6220?
6320.
Okay, so that's.
That's,
Are we passed?
we're past, yeah, I have just a couple questions on the first 50.
Okay, go ahead.
Policy 6140, page 25, for those of you that have that. It says, all public funds shall be deposited in a qualified public depository. Does that include internal accounts and funds that we do for fundraising? And just for me, could you talk to me about what a qualified public depository is?
It's a federally insured bank account that, again, it follows the rules of the SEC. And it's insured up to a certain amount. So the school district here, we invest or we deposit our funds into SBA, the SBA account, which is managed in Tallahassee, of course. And I'll tell you, 100% of the school districts pretty much invest there, put their funds there.
And so I don't know, let's say I'm a rogue person who did a fundraiser at a school. Am I allowed to just go put it in any qualified public depository?
No, the school district board.
Is it procedure or policy?
It is, we have our procedure that states we have certain bank accounts that, of course, the chair and the superintendent signs off on. So, like for Clay County, our bank account is Wells Fargo and Bank of America. So, all of our accounts are managed with at the district level, and the schools have the authority to go in and deposit into those sites that we account. They cannot go to a separate bank and just say, I'd like to deposit these funds.
So
We
for-
set up those
yeah.
accounts.
So for us, qualified public depository is a district-approved public depository? Is it something, I don't know,
What are you asking? I mean, I'm not sure what you're asking.
to a reader, what does it mean?
So the
If I'm a
state
parent
actually-
and,
I'm sorry, the state actually issues, the Division of Collateral, the state court, they actually issue a list
Okay.
of qualified state public depositories.
okay,
So they actually maintain that list, so you can, pick who you want to be with.
and then we have either a procedure somewhere, or procedures or policies that govern how this money comes in and where it should exactly go, somewhere, right? Like when we take money in, where it goes? In what
I think
account?
the confusion, the public funds that they're talking about
Yeah.
here are the tax dollars.
Yeah,
So it's not like your fundraisers,
well, it
right?
says all public funds, are we
Well,
only talking about?
It is the internal funds.
It would be the internal funds.
It is all the funds that come in.
So it's somewhere, it tells them where it must go, somewhere.
She's trying to say, is there procedure set up to where like a principal knows, hey, I can only use these two banks. I can't go and make my own bank account and put it in my own bank account for my school.
Well, for instance, internal accounts, they have their own procedural manual that
Okay.
defines what you're supposed to do when you get a deposit. What happens when you receive a deposit? You will do this, you will write a receipt, you deposit it into the bank account that's authorized by the principal, and, you know.
So yes, it's in the internal.
All right, so it's somewhere in the
Yeah,
internal
yes, of
account
course, yes.
manual, and then all public funds is all dollars.
All dollars, every
Okay.
penny that comes in here.
Thank you for that clarification. I had one last thing on page 47, 6220, budget preparation. The adopted annual is paragraph 3, the adopted annual employee health self-insurance fund budget shall include a fund balance. What is our fund balance? Is there a percentage? Is it $20, $2 million? How do we determine? Yeah,
Your fund balance overall is, it ranges between 3%
Yes.
to 5%. Our goal is to try to get to 5%.
yes. That's the general fund balance. Well, what is the health self-insurance fund budget? Shall have a fund balance. It looks like as it reads, we have a separate fund balance to make sure that we always have funding for our self-insured.
Our self-insurance fund is pretty much, it's a subsidiary of our general fund.
Well, then this policy is no good.
What do you mean?
It says we have a budget shall include a fund balance reserve for the self-insured.
Yes, you do have to have a self-insurance. Remember, when you go self-insured, the requirement is that you maintain a fund balance so that you can take care of all of your claims that are funded through the self-insurance fund. We are self-insured. We
Yes.
decided to go
I
self-insured.
want to talk a little bit about actuarial.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because it
yeah.
actually says at least equal to the average of 60 days of claims incurred in the prior fiscal year.
Right.
If the budgeted reserve is less than the average of 60 days in the claims incurred in the prior year, the superintendent shall develop and submit a plan to restore the budgeted reserves. So I was just wondering what is our reserves? Like, I don't know these things.
She wants to know, is there a separate fund balance for our,
Yes, yes, and that is.
She wants to know the amount. What is the
Right,
amount?
and that, because we are self-insured, we are required to get an actuary analysis, thank you. An actuary analysis annually to ensure that we are maintaining that fund balance to support the activities that do go through our self-insurance fund. We became our own insurance person, you know, so.
So she wants to know, what is that 3%?
Or what
Do you
is
have that
that?
number for that?
I'm just going from memory here.
So is it part of our general fund, which would kind of skew those numbers, or is it separate?
It's separate.
So you have multiple funds within the school district's budget. You have the operating fund, which is the one that takes care of everything other than what goes in the other funds. And then you have your insurance fund. It's a separate fund balance all by itself. It's an internal service fund. So that fund balance, what they're saying, to get an actuarial review done, you must maintain 60 days of what the actuary is going to say is going to be your claims reserve. That has to be maintained. It has to be your ending fund balance. If you're not meeting that or don't have that, they will indicate that in the report. That report also gets filed with the state. So everybody who has a self-insured fund, the actuarial report is required at a certain date and filed with the state appropriately. So that's one of the 4 statutes. But you have to maintain that. I off the top of my head don't know what that number is in that ballot, that fund. I mean, we can get it to you, but that's totally separate different funds.
But it matches what it's supposed to be.
So that
Sometimes it's
explanation,
even more.
that
Sometimes
explanation
it's
makes
more.
sense.
Sometimes, yeah,
Correct.
sometimes it's more than what we
Now,
actually are required.
if it's less, then somewhere that money, that fund has to be brought up to what it needs to be brought up to. And the only place that can happen from is the operating fund. Because you can't move money from another fund except for the
Okay,
operating.
no, thank you, that's a perfect explanation, I appreciate that.
So any more for 50? Ms. Hanson?
No,
Okay, so from policy 6233, which is page 49, to policy 6423, which is page 99. Do you have any questions?
I do have one comment.
Where?
This is going to be under 6320, purchasing and contracting for commodities and contractual services.
6320, so page 55.
But we're going to go to, under G, I believe it is.
Which G? The first G? Second G?
I have no idea.
Are you,
It's going to be under identical tie low bids. It looks like page 6.
Page 59. I think.
yes, 59, middle of the page. But there's no
Well, Mike, I understand the importance of local vendors, but I think the tie low bid is kind of rare to begin with. But I think, to me, the importance would be looking at the experience of the 2 bidders. So I think that should be considered in our
So add that
decision.
language.
So you want to add G back, is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not.
Where, you said G. I'm not seeing G.
If you look under, just where it says identical tie low
So
bids.
G would be like under responsive / responsible bidders, and then it's like, it looks like this.
You're saying add G? I'm just trying to figure out what verbiage are you trying to add verbiage back, or are you adding your own?
I'm trying to add new verbiage.
Okay, so you went,
I know that the local vendor is important, shall be recommended for award, but I think that we also ought to include experience in there. We're looking at a 20-year bidder who knows the job very well versus somebody that's been in it locally for just a year.
So,
Beth, you want that to be E? You want that to be E under this?
Well, I'm looking at more of the, it could be, yes,
Okay.
because I was thinking more in the paragraph.
The first 4, A, B, C, D, are criteria for what is a local vendor. So it wouldn't go there.
Go next.
Because in the next section, might it go there?
And 2 or more present low-type bids that accompany the larger dollar award of the total.
I guess I see it under the first paragraph as being key. If we're going to agree to consider that.
So experience wouldn't make them equal though, right?
Well, if you've got tie bid, just because one is local and one is not, that shouldn't be the only selection criteria. We should be looking at their quality of work and experience.
You've got to have an objective criterion now. So you have to describe it as amount of years of service or
Right.
One with greater
Yeah,
larger
part of the bid criteria.
Yeah, bid is based on the dollar amount, not the
Well, this one
criteria.
So this is a tie.
If the
This
dollar,
is the Thai one,
Yeah.
and then we do the out-of-state, because that's a clear definition of local or non.
And then we do the company with the larger dollar amount
Yeah.
of the total bid.
We would have to state how we're going to base their criteria.
But it
Their
says if there's
experience.
two local vendors that both have the same dollar, or that the dollar award is not a criterion, then I think it maybe would go under there. These are like the
local ones,
tiebreakers,
not the out-of-state ones, the
if they're
local
both
ones.
local.
Could you
But it
say,
does say by a method that the board may
select.
select under D. So that's kind of a catch-all
Right.
of how we can,
That's for the local.
So then the board would have
have,
the ability to be the arbitrarily
Right,
pick one
you
over
could
the
say, I
other.
would pick this one because they have more experience.
Right.
and
In the
then
event of a tie.
Justify that in the,
But
put it in
do
the
our
file
other
for
policies
justification.
contradict that? Because not every contract comes through us. Because in our other policies that I read through yours, I can't tell you which one it is because I read so many. It says that, essentially all contracts don't have to come through us
Right.
by a certain dollar amount. So should we have to amend that? Like if a tie comes to board right here?
Yeah,
what was
a
yours?
tie could go to the board.
Well, all,
I mean,
all bids that the district puts out, whether it's construction or purchasing, they do come to the board, all of our bids.
Whether they're tied, whether
they're
they're.
tied.
this is rare. It rarely
Yeah.
rarely happens.
And I don't want to spend
Yeah.
a lot of time on it, but to me, having been in that process,
Right.
experience was key.
Right, yeah.
So,
so what if we just change the language, so right where it says identical / low tie low bids, the procedure below will be followed after the Florida state preference, if any, is applied. When identical low bids are received from equally experienced companies, and one is an out-of-district vendor and a local vendor, the local vendor shall be recommended for the award. Did you just add the language there? Just, all you're saying is that they have equal experience in the,
yeah.
Yeah,
I
that's
just
good.
caution that because how are we going to determine what's the equal there?
I
Just
don't know if
because
you want to.
somebody's been in, is it the time they've been in business?
Or how many
Or how
customers
many
they've
projects they've
serviced.
done?
How many
Yeah.
projects they've done, right?
Yeah. I think that really what you might be looking for is the bid criteria. Like if you want to mandate that, the bid criteria like includes experience, then, during the process, that gets voted on.
Yeah,
And that way there is no real tie when it comes to experience. It's based on the 5 or 10 people that are looking at the bid itself to determine, I'm giving them a 10, I'm giving them a 5.
So ultimately, we can just determine that when it is presented to the board as an individual board member for votes. Correct?
Yeah, there's 5 on
Because of the, right.
so I would think adding it to the criteria would be kind of like having a rubric. It's just one more thing we can look at in the criteria. That would solve the whole problem, wouldn't it? If we just put it in the criteria?
I would defer to the attorneys on that because a bid per statute is based on the dollar amount. It's the low bid. It doesn't have
Yeah.
anything to do with criteria. If you're gonna do criteria, you need to do a request for proposal. And that's
Okay.
when you add your percentages of what you're basing your award on.
So if there is a tie, and I know that it's rare, we must have some way to figure out who gets what then, right?
Well, it sounds like by statute, the
You're going
only
to be
way to
guaranteed to
tender.
get a protest if you don't have a policy.
Yeah,
So you got to have a
But it's
policy.
in here and you get to pick as a board member, so that's what they're trying
Yeah.
to say
yeah, okay.
when it comes before the
No,
board.
I'm
So
fine with that. I'm just
legally-
trying to figure out a way to get to the solution.
Right.
It sounds like we just need to keep it as is.
And leave the board by B,
Yeah.
by a lot of other methods by the board.
Yeah, and allow the board to
Yeah.
decide when the time of the contract is approved on the contract.
Yeah.
Okay, so without objection, we're gonna move forward.
No change.
No change.
No change on that.
Okay. So, any others?
6345, change orders, just a question. Paragraph 2,
6345, you said?
yep, page 97, paragraph 2. It's just a question for me. It says the superintendent is authorized to approve and execute any construction contract change order that will increase by 100,000. I know we have seen change orders less than 100,000. Do you just do that as a courtesy to show us?
So any contract that comes before you or the board,
Yes.
if we have a change order in that particular contract, regardless of the amount or the days, we bring it to the board regardless.
So is this language right then? I mean, like,
This
'cause
would
we,
just be like if we were ever in an emergency and we're like, hey, this is an emergency, we gotta get this done right now, and we need to add it to the contract, we can't wait for the board meeting. You know, the
Okay.
superintendent would be allowed to sign off on it. We still have to bring it to the board for
Okay.
information that, hey, we increased this by 100,000 for this emergency, letting you know what happened.
all right, so I see that explanation just wasn't there, because I know that you've always shown us the change orders, and I'm real happy about that, and I didn't want this to mean that you're not going to do that anymore unless it's over 100,000, so.
No, we'll still do it, and that was, again, just to give us flexibility for 25,000, especially construction, now you can't do a whole lot.
Right.
So the 100,000 was just to kind of give
Could
us
do my
some,
driveway.
yeah, some leeway to say, you know, to do it in a pinch is really all, but we'll still bring them to
Okay,
the board.
thank you for that.
Okay, and 99 to the end of 6,000, is there any?
6550. Travel and expenses. These are just questions. So don't shoot them.
Page 103.
Under in-county travel, I didn't know if we wanted to be up to date with technology. And instead of saying odometer reading, use GPS miles between where we're going. Because I could see a lot of personal trips here and there with going by the odometer. And then I just explained to me under B with out-of-county travel, I've never heard of in advance, giving money in advance. Do we do that a lot?
We don't do that a lot, but there are times where they need the funds to, sort of like, student trips. If they need to pay for lunches or anything for those students as they're going on this, field trip, whatever it is that's out of county, then we do provide the, funds up front. Of course, they do bring back receipts and whatnot, so that we,
Yeah.
but yes, it doesn't happen frequently. But when it does, this allows us to have the flexibility of doing that, accommodating the request.
What was your first question?
Well, my first comment was under A, in-county travel. Said mileage should be determined by actual odometer reading, if travel performed by personal automobile, and I just didn't know if we should use GPS.
You wanted to say or GPS?
Yeah.
Because we can have a lot of,
More how we do it anyway.
We can do that.
I think we just Yes, that's a good.
otherwise I'm going to travel to see a friend.
We do GPS, yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
Google Maps and all.
Google Maps. When I was 17. So without objection, we're gonna add that verbiage, is that okay? GPS. All right, any more on this 6,000 policy?
Yes.
Go right ahead, Miss. You are on a roll of things
No, I'm
on
not.
your expertise. Go.
6610, school internal funds. Under C, it talks about safekeeping of monies,
129.
certificates and bonds.
Oh, I think
It
where I was
seems
going.
like under number 1, promptly deposited to me 5 working days of receipt is not quick. So I don't know if we, here again, that's more of a procedure. I'm not even sure why but 5 to me is way too long.
That's Red Book, actually, from the state of Florida.
That's crazy.
It's been 5, yeah. Yeah, the Florida Department of Education Red Book. And all of that really too, if they get it on Thursday, 5 days, it gets into the beginning of next week, it kind of does.
Well, it'll be banking days, I would think, not calendar.
It doesn't specify that in the Red Book, we go by days. We have 5 days to get it into the bank.
Okay, ignore that one. Under petty cash, I've got 66.
I have something on 6610
There you go.
that we were just on. So I actually requested and have a copy of our internal accounts manual. And I wanted to say that when it comes to school internal funds, it says the school board is responsible for the administration and control of internal funds. I just wanted to know a couple of things about that. So over the 2.5 years that I've sat on the board, I've often wondered what goes on, like updates, or if there's somewhere we can look to receive information about internal funds. Maybe some kind of a report each month, just like something attached to show us maybe dollar values, or if something happened to the funds at a school, or I know that it's really odd that this section doesn't name the superintendent, it names the school board. And so what I'm thinking, I know we have a new CFO coming in, is nothing right away, but I would like to maybe for the board to get just a readout of the internal funds or some kind of update each month, or maybe quarterly. And then if we had some discrepancies in internal funds, let's say someone stole some money or something, I think it's important for the board this is the people's cash, right? Every school is like a separate little bank account. And I think it's important that we are maybe kept apprised of what's going on. I don't think it would be too much. I know in this policy, it puts a lot of responsibility on each principal, kind of like they're the head teller at the bank, right? And so maybe in the future, just to keep in our mind, that we could maybe learn a little bit more about it, the processes of this, how we run our internal funds, and at some point, if something were to happen catastrophic to someone's internal funds, the board is actually notified, that kind of a thing. Not now, because I know there's a transition going on, but does that sound like something that we could do?
Yeah. So for internal accounts, the principal is responsible. They're accountable for those internal accounts. The bookkeeper at that school really is facilitating him in making things happen at the school, but the principal is responsible for those ones at that school. So as we transition them into Business Plus, moving forward into the next year, as of July 1, that change in of itself is going to change a lot of how things are done at the school. So my hope is that during that process, we can implement and start to have a new internal accounts handbook that would be applicable to how things are changing and where they're going to. And we certainly can figure out how to get you something monthly that would give you the cash balances that they have in their bank account at that time. So if that's something.
Yes, because I knew we were transitioning into something new. It's one of the few policies that actually puts that precisely underneath the school board. And so that would be, and I knew when we transfer to Business Plus, there's a whole lot of brand new ways we can keep track. And
so the internal accounts handbook would be a new procedure.
Right.
It's not going to be like, oh, this is what you do when you get into Business Plus.
No,
That's
no.
more like, okay, it would be a new procedure that would cover all aspects from, banking to travel, cash advance, because at the schools, that's where you're going to see the cash advance go out for travel. Because they have so many athletic and school activities that they do that, we don't have P cards all the way to all these people that are traveling. We give them a cash advance. They come.
Right.
So all that can kind of be incorporated into the handbook. And it would be one guide that, if you're a bookkeeper at a middle school and junior high, sorry, and you go to an elementary or a high school, sorry, then you should be able to transition. It should be something that's consistent, that they
Okay.
can follow, that this is applicable regardless of whether you're at elementary, junior high, high school, you just do the same thing. So it's important for the consistency thing, especially when you have bookkeepers moving in.
All right, well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
I have a suggestion in 6610 over expending limitations. I would suggest to put approval of the superintendent and the board. When it have to do with overspending
On D,
during any fiscal year, without waiting approval of the superintendent and the board.
What part?
you're on D,
66.
expenditures,
Yes.
and then overspending limitations.
Yes.
You want to add approval of the superintendent, oh, it says or board.
Yeah, I'm suggesting put and the board, like, so we can discuss.
Oh, you
the
want instead
situation.
of or, you want and.
And
And, okay, so any overspending. Do I have consensus on adding and versus or?
How does that,
How does that affect the operating?
yeah, because would it have to be put onto a consented, I mean, how would we get both?
it's overspending, so
Yeah,
I guess
Is it-
my idea is to kind of have a discussion and see what's going on, more in detail.
Something, it's not often, and if something like that does happen, obviously we can bring it to the board as a information item or.
Yeah,
or
I'm
to
it's more
bring
about
it-
information
or-
than
Yeah,
anything.
yeah, okay, so it doesn't
but
have
it's
to.
not, doesn't happen very often.
And that'll be, will that be part of the update for the internal accounts that she's requesting? Like, could you show us that, hey, they overspent here, overspent with that, on that, or no?
So for internal accounts, it's cash basis, so, they don't, you don't put a budget on each one of the lines like we do.
Right. I was just saying, like, if overspending occurred, could you add that to the report that you were?
If that's, yes, we could. Most of the, if there is overspending, the way, it's mostly in the athletic area, and because usually it's under the understanding that, football's gonna kind of cover these other programs that that just can't make the kind of money that football does. But you should not see it anywhere else, but if there is, we can report that.
Okay, I think that's what he
Yeah.
as an
it's
individual
for
board member, he
information
just wants to be
purposes.
notified if
Yeah.
there's overspending.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Are you okay with that?
Yes.
Do we have, without objection, can they add that to the report if this occurs?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Gilhalton?
Yeah, I just want to be careful that it's clear in policy that it's for information, because if you just change that word from or to and, then it could potentially be read that they have to have our approval before they can take action.
Well, that's why we're not gonna change the word.
Okay.
We're just going to add it to the report that she gives us. So if there is overspending, they're just gonna notify us within our report that they give us
I'm good with that.
or monthly. Okay. So we have consensus on that. Is there any more issues on this specific policy?
Just 6, on that policy, no.
Okay. So, moving from this policy, is there any more in this area? And it was-
I had just a question on 6625. When we move to a cashless society here within the schools, yeah, when would we use a petty cash account?
So.
I'm from petty cash eras where you got these things, but
Schools, petty cash funds are usually spent on, like, if you need to have funds for the athletics and things that you need to do to maintain an event. So that's, or if you have a dancing or something going on. There is no district in the state of Florida that's cashless, and to want to get to that point is probably nearly impossible, because, especially at sporting events, when kids, some kids might be going to sporting events, jump on their bike, and they're using their own money.
Yes.
They took it out of their piggy bank. I just want to go out and be with my friends and watch this game. They're not, their parents might not even be giving it to them.
Right.
Some don't have credit cards. some people, it's not fair to ask that because they don't want to pay for the fee on the credit card, they want to do cash. So-
Well, that's how it works. They don't allow you to pay with cash at any sporting event.
Think about snow cones. You come in with a bunch of quarters, or you come in with a dollar bill and they're 50 cents. You need that 50 cents to give them change.
And I actually agree with what we're talking about here, and I think there's a discussion to be had about what you just said, not at this time when it comes
I agree.
to this
Yep.
cashless push. So, Madam Chair, maybe we can write it down for some other time to have a discussion about, because I don't think the conversation's for this.
Right.
But I want to make sure that, in fact, we do have this, and I understood the reason why we do have this after being a teacher for nearly 20 years. It's important, and I think this board needs to have a conversation about
There's a lot of
the
frustration.
parameters of this
Yeah.
cashless drive that we're trying to get to, so,
They also use cash at lunchtime as well.
yeah.
We still accept cash.
Okay, that was it, thank you.
I've done 6.
Oh, you are? I thought you said you had something else.
I did, it's worthless. I did.
So you don't want to share it?
No. I do not.
Ms.
6685, sorry, I'm really into this finance stuff for some reason. On my third read. 6685.
143.
I was just wondering why we crossed off the list of such activities may include but not limited to, because it kind of gives examples of what we're talking about. We authorizes the expenditure of funds that are derived from enterprises on designated gifts up to, we left off the parameters of what that might look like. Do we know why we took it off? It says, funding for promotion, public relations, and hospitality. Such activities may include but not be limited to involving graduation, visiting committees, orientation and work conferences, recruitment of employees. I'm a big fan of examples of what things should look like, instead of just leaving a big open hole there. Do we know why we crossed off the examples? And at the end of the,
I remember this one was a few months ago.
if I was reading the policy online, it gives us examples of what,
143. 6685 is the, here.
Yeah. I think that sometimes generally, sometimes the examples, and I think that it wasn't like a big, strong opinion either way, but sometimes we take it off because it can be limiting. Even though the language does say includes but
Yeah.
not limited to, I don't think there was any big reason besides the fact
Yeah.
that sometimes examples can, even though they're designed to provide clarity, sometimes they can be limiting.
in this particular area, I think they do provide some clarity. And lastly, at the end, I don't think this is actually, so if you don't have the lined out item,
Ms. Hanson, hold
It-
on. Can we address this first before you move on to your next example?
oh yes,
So do we want to put this verbiage back in the policy?
I'm fine with that. I don't mind the
I'm
examples.
fine with that too.
Ms. Clark?
I can go either way.
yeah.
If the majority wants it back in, I'll be in agreement.
Okay, so Neola, can we put that verbiage back in? Such activities may include but not limited to A through H?
Sure. Do you want to select all those options?
Yes, sir. We don't want them, please. The board consensus. Okay, now you can.
At the very end on the red line version, it says prohibitions on expenditures. The board prohibits the expenditure of general K through 12 funds for any purposes that are not directly related to students. Any expenditures of board funds must be authorized by law. Why did we cross that off?
For this,
So when I read that, I think my concern there would be not directly related. So if you're paying, let's say, travel expenses for professional development of a teacher.
It's related? You're saying it's not related?
I don't know if I would use the word directly related. To me, directly means right on top of the student, not 3 or 4.
So maybe we cross off the word not directly and say not related to students? Because
I'd be good with that. I was worried that, when I read that, I was like, directly related to me means like the pencil we're handing to the student directly.
yeah, so you're reading it differently than I did, but
Not
that's,
three
you
or
are the
four.
superintendent, so I understand that.
Yes, I was.
I'm just
concerned.
thinking that in no way, shape, or form should we, I would not want to strike out language that says we should be spending on things other than students. Maybe we could say that are, instead of not directly related to students, maybe we just say purchases that, that are related to students. Would the not directly come out be, or make it better?
I think it's the not directly piece that for me gives me concern.
So.
People will argue whether it's direct or not direct.
Because I'm here to say professional development for teachers is directly going to affect students, right? And so maybe it's just the language, because I like the idea that we have the language in here. So could we make it, if the board approves, the board prohibits the expenditure of general K through 12 funds for any purchases that are related to students? How do we word
Not
it?
related to
Not related to
students.
Not related to students, there we go.
So take out directly.
Mhm.
So put the verbiage back in and take out directly. Is that something that
We
the
should all know that this is a thing, so.
board?
The only hiccup that I see with that is this is under specifically funding for promotion, public relations, and hospitality. So I think there are going to be things that you're going to spend money on that aren't related to students when you're considering hospitality, for example. Who are you hosting? And what are you spending on that person that you're hosting in your district?
If you look at the list of examples, like official meetings and
It
receptions,
says work conferences, recruitment. I mean, I think all of that relates to students. Does it hurt to leave it in without the word directly?
I don't know, I just like, if you're giving an award to somebody for meritorious performance, what could that award be for, and would it be related to students? And then could you not offer the award if it's not, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. I'm looking at the examples though. Activities involving graduation, visiting committees, orientation and work conferences, recruitment of employees. When you're looking at the examples, that's kind of why I like examples. Then I see how that does relate. So I guess it would be up to the board. I just feel weird, of course, after my education, striking out anything that says it doesn't need to be related to students, so.
When you think about recruitment of employees, what if you're spending money to recruit HVAC employees? I mean, yes, that's related to students, but would the public agree? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like you're kind of boxing yourself in on,
The main purpose of this, well, I would say the direct purpose of this language is to ensure that we're not spending K-12 dollars, FEFP dollars, specifically for food purchases. We have never been able to utilize those funds for food items. A lot of times, these activities, you want to feed folks, you want to do all these, but we are not, Red Book, we cannot utilize taxpayers' dollars, well, I should say taxpayers' dollars, FEFP dollars to purchase food items for these types of activities. So primarily, this is what is stating that it's really related to that.
Yeah.
Not so much more the conferences and whatnot,
have the
because we
words.
do those conferences and we do utilize the FEFP. But for the food items, that's why there's donations, that's why there's other external dollars that do come into the district that we can utilize to help fund some of those types of activities. The internal accounts, when they raise funds, that's what's paying for the food. Unless it's specific in the federal application that you can purchase food, such as Title I, parent involvement, you cannot use FEFP dollars. So this language is primarily focusing on that specific, that area.
okay.
But this is the statutory language, I would
Yes.
assume. So therefore, you know, we have it in our policy.
So Madam Chair, maybe we could add the language, but without the word directly?
If it's statutory language, I don't want to change it at all. I'd rather just put the whole sentence in and leave it. If it's not statutory, like the language isn't statutoral, then we can strike out directly. But if it's like state statute, I don't want to mess with the sentence.
Do we know if that is word for word? Is that the language
I would
statutorily?
defer to
He's looking for it.
Neola.
Neil, Tom's looking.
The rule is cited doesn't have any language about directly related to students.
Okay. So we could strike the word directly then?
It doesn't have to say related to students.
So do I have word consensus to strike directly?
That's fine.
Okay, so without objection, let's add that language back in and strike directly if you don't mind. Is there anything else on the 6,000?
Yeah, on that was about petty cash, but we covered it, so that's why I interject.
So let's move on to 7,000.
$72.50.
Well, hold on. Where do I have this one? You guys added that on after. Okay, sorry. Before we get started, I was gonna ask the board if it was okay if we could, pull the use of district facilities, grounds, and equipment. It's 7510 and add it to our June policy.
7510?
There was like 3 policies that we wanted to revisit in June, and I wanted to see if we could do that as well with this one, if there's no objection. This is going to be, I think, a further in-depth discussion, and I spoke to Mr. Brodsky about this. And it's all about including our community within our schools, which is something that we as a board have discussed, and that direction we want to move.
Yes.
So I want to, it's 7510.
I had that pulled out as well.
Yeah, it's the use of our facilities. I would just like to cover that on a different day because it's going to be more in-depth, and Mr. Brodsky's finding out further information for me that I don't think we'll be able to cover today and making a decision.
At the June board workshop, did you say?
Yes, ma'am. Please. Okay, so let's start with the first 50 pages with 7,000.
$72.50.
I'm trying to get there, sorry.
That would be page 11.
7434.
Oh, hold on.
Oh, what are we on?
7250. Ms. Clark wants to speak about 7250.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Miss Clark.
It's all right. Turn up your hearing.
7250.
Yes, page 11.
I even have my hearing aids in, I apologize. 72.
Commemoration of school facilities under B. I think we had talked in general that we would no longer name schools after individuals. But yet that's not what, we've left that in here. So I think we need to decide whether we table it or review it again, whether we want to have that option or continue, because we talked about naming it after places.
Was that prior to, it must have been prior to when I came to the board, right?
I remember having the conversation, I don't know, maybe it was surrounding naming Spring Park Elementary.
Could have been, but it's come up a couple times, I think.
I like having the option to do it, like for instance, they just named something at Middleburg High School.
The gym.
Yeah,
The gym.
but schools in general.
Well, I can tell you that Wilkinson,
Well, that's a school facility, so it could be, I think it could be any portion of the school facility. I like having the option, because I think there are some times when it is significantly appropriate to do so. I don't want to forbid us from doing it if it is appropriate.
And Madam Chair, I know that Wilkinson schools are built on property that was actually donated, and so hence the name of the schools became Wilkinson, and it was quite a large, like 100 acres or something, I don't know the exact, but it was a lot of land that was donated, and I felt at that time that was appropriate
Right.
for them to name the last name of those schools, so.
But I think it's a good conversation to have when you're naming something, that obviously anytime you name something after a person, you run a risk, if they're still living, that, maybe you might regret it later. And I think that that's a weighty decision to make as a board or, as a district. But I don't want to say absolutely no, we can't do it. Does that make sense?
It does, I just thought that was our philosophy.
Yeah.
And then when I read it in here,
It's conflicting.
Including with the renaming of schools, just to.
not the facility, but the school in general. Yeah.
The only problem I have with this sentence on B is if they're a contracted employee, they just don't exist. So let's just say, for example, I don't really want to use this example, but like a coach who has come back, who's retired, but has come back to do whatever, is contracted with us for whatever reason. I don't know, because they need another thing to do with their life. I don't know, for whatever reason, and they're contracted, well, because they now are assisting or helping us, but they're technically contracted, whether they're being paid or not, or whatever, we can't use them. We can't name something after them. So the only problem I had with is the contracting verbiage. If we could remove that, because just because they're contracted with us, I don't think, unless there's something statutorily that we can't do that, but I don't think that we should just exempt somebody from that. I'm looking from like a coach perspective. They come back to assist in coaching or assist in something, we now can't, and again, we're gonna be cautious about naming stuff after people that are still alive, but I don't wanna just be like, okay, well, because you're contracted, there goes your
Right.
name.
And we have, Coach Riddle was at the ribbon cutting, we named Clay High's track after him, and he's still actively coaching, not in the district, I don't think, but, in the
But if he
community.
was in the district.
Right. I
Or
get your point.
has a contract, he's now exempt and we can't name the
Right.
track after him. So
Right.
I think that we should take that verbiage out,
Mhm.
if there's no objection to that.
I'm fine with that.
Contracting part.
Just the contracting part. So that, and then, so if they're employed, let's see, the names of the person that they're employed.
I think just strike that sentence personally.
Right. If we're okay with, even employed.
I think it would be the rare exception that you're going to name something after somebody who is
That's
still
still
working.
working, yeah.
Right.
Right.
But, if you want to have that option, because you don't know what maybe you have a war hero that comes home, they're maybe,
Right.
Or
they
they could
accomplished
be
something.
jail or
Yeah.
something, yeah.
And we just don't want to, like you said, limit ourselves to that. So if, without objection, just striking this whole sentence, the names of persons actively employed by or contracting with the Clay County School District shall not be considered. Do I have consensus on that, Lauren?
Yes.
Yes.
So Neil, if you'll just strike that last sentence, correct? Okay. And, any other, the first 50 pages?
I have policy number 7434, smoking and tobacco-free environment.
That's page 29.
So we struck out the entire section of dissemination of policy. Notice that this policy will be provided through. We struck out appropriate no tobacco signage, a notice to students and parents and guardians in the handbook, or student code of conduct, I believe, and orientation. We struck out written notice in staff handbooks, and we struck out reminder announcements of this policy at school district events. I'm not sure why we struck it out, because if you're having a tobacco-free environment, we need to be proactive in making sure people know that it is a tobacco-free environment. And I am suggesting that we put back in, not even all that language, most of the language, to make sure that we are being proactive when it comes to a tobacco-free environment. And the program evaluation part, this has all been struck out. The smoking tobacco-free policy shall be assessed by the district or its designated evaluator. I should hope that we do have someone in the district that is looking after the no smoking policy. And I think it's important that we, like I said, are proactive in making sure everyone knows, not just one time or not just one sign, but it be in the, student code of conduct and parental handbooks, and visitor policies. There's no sense in having a policy if we don't support it.
I agree with you fully, because I know advocating for this, some of the signage, actually, the parents were very thrilled to see on our campus, but they were a little annoyed because it was just a cigarette butt. They wanted the vaping, they wanted the other options, which I know we can't put 87 objects on a sign, but that's one of their biggest complaints was the signage. But they loved that we had the signage, and they loved that we were combating this, because a lot of parents don't even know that their kids have vapes. They find out when they're in trouble, and it's getting more and more accessible, and I don't think that the cigarettes are really more of a concern than the vaping. And everybody knows how passionate I am about this, because there are kids.
Well, and I believe you even found a way to get us free signage.
We did, yes.
So we probably don't need to strike it out if we can figure out a way, but.
Correct.
So let me be clear, A, B, C, and D are currently being done.
Right, so I'd like to leave them in there.
Yeah, let's take it out, because I think at the time was thought of as procedural, not really a policy.
Also because we don't print the code of conduct and some of the printing issues.
So, we could take out printing. Where is the printing?
Well, it could be in the
I
student
think it's
handbook.
B, written notice.
Right.
Yeah, so
And
that's,
C,
we
just in
can
the
just
student-
add that into, our
Yeah.
code of conduct, and it's online.
And we have a parent handbook, and we have a
Yeah.
visitor. It's not
All of
hard.
those things are currently being done.
Exactly.
And it's a matter of whether it's procedural or not. We viewed it as procedural when we did this months ago.
And I'm sure climate and culture.
So,
I'd just
you
like
wanna
to-
leave program evaluation too, this one?
Well, someone does evaluate it,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yes.
look at how many maybe referrals we had. I mean, I don't see any reason why we need to strike it out. It also makes us appear that we care. Like, this is what the board agrees that we should be doing, so.
I'm fine with leaving it.
So without objection, we're gonna leave this stricken out for, at the end. Do you want opportunities for sensation programs? Because that was one of the things we talked about in our last policy, was after the second, is it the second time they're supposed to go to sensation programs, or be offered? We do that, yeah. Okay. So can we leave all this verbiage that was strucken out with board consensus? Any objections?
We use play action
So we have two different groups that we use. Tobacco Free Florida has it's like a 1 hour online program that's used usually on the first offense. And then Play Action Coalition has a 6-week program.
So instead of public health department, can we just, well, it says or,
Yeah.
so we can leave the verbiage, because it says or other appropriate health and allied community-based organizations.
Yeah.
So with board consensus, let's leave the struck out version. Yeah,
You want it all restored?
all restored.
Yep.
Do I have consensus?
Yes.
Alrighty.
And I have one more
Neola,
thing.
if you will apply that language back to our policy, please.
I have one more thing with this policy.
Yes, ma'am.
It's a real heavy heart that I want to talk about this. My father died from smoking. He had small cell cancer. So I just want to let you know, when this comes out of my mouth, it's not because I'm all for smoking, but I think maybe at some time in the future, we should talk about teachers. and smoking, right? I am not sure, 100% sure, when it comes to the adults that we hire, that they should not be allowed at any time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. I like the policy as is, but maybe in the future we can have a conversation about if a teacher wants to smoke, then maybe we could find a way to let that happen in a very discreet manner, like many other districts do. But it is not for now. I like it the way it is. I just want to tell you that sometimes smoking is an issue.
Well, thank you for saying that, because I totally.
And it doesn't necessarily mean they're doing it around students. They don't smell anymore. If they're, just in the back of your mind, think about people who are on campus 80 hours a week. That's all I was saying.
So they're in school 7 hours, maybe 8 hours, so they have the rest of the time to smoke during the
Yeah.
the
Well, I'm
day.
saying for a future conversation.
Yeah, I totally agree, and it's the one thing that I had thought about when we passed it. Obviously, we wanted to agree and pass such. But I worry about the CTE teachers, the mechanics, or whoever. I would hate to lose CTE teachers just because they can't have a.
But I'm fine with the policy to go forward as is. I just think maybe later on, like, it could be 2 years from now, but
Yep.
it was weighing heavy on my heart because I know my dad tried to be very discreet, but it was a real problem. He wouldn't be dead if he could have quit. And not that he didn't try, so.
I would also like to remind us that we are self-insured, so I feel like this promotion of smoking is going to also increase our premiums.
I don't think I'm promoting
So I'm
smoking.
just saying,
More
just
so,
maybe,
we have to worry about diabetes.
but
That's
also,
not
like I
one
said,
issue.
and I just would like to share too that, I will never forget this to the day that I die, and I don't know, maybe it's the impact that it had on me, but, I went to elementary school and my art teacher was definitely a heavy smoker, and I smelt it every time I went to her class, whether it was on her or whether she breathed it on me. So I am a huge advocate of this. I've seen what it can do. I have physically seen what it can do. So I just, I think that maybe we can do better with our insurance to maybe give them sensation help, weaning methods, things that we can do. So I just, also from a business standpoint.
No, I agree. It was just food for thought, weighs on my mind, so.
All right, any more in the first 50?
Does that include 7440, plant security?
Up to 7530.
So it does.
So which one do you want?
7440, plant security.
So that's 35.
No,
Wait,
it's
hold on.
31, page 31.
Sorry.
We're on 7440.
Yeah, I was curious why we struck out some things and left others, whether we even need to have individual items left.
May include but not limited to, it's kind of the reverse of what we just
Yeah.
talked about before.
Yeah.
So anything can be used for safety and security.
But I certainly wouldn't remove H. It's expensive but important.
You can still do H because it's
Not limited
So-
not
to.
limited to.
The big difference between bulletproof and bullet resistant.
Exactly.
So we have bullet resistant film, but it's not bulletproof, so.
I probably wouldn't talk publicly about.
So we'll just put,
But I was curious why we, it's back to including and certain areas that we define more as to what it is.
And I think that in the process, I think Neola tried to give you a smorgasbord of options. And I think probably what they did was they checked the ones that we know are,
That we do all the time.
currently
Yeah.
implemented.
So we good with that? Okay, any more through 50? Okay, so let's go 50 to 100.
I have 7540.02. It's page 63. So I think the board had a discussion a couple months ago about making sure the language matches our app and what teachers should and should not be doing with social media. Can someone here help remind me, did we pull that section, or and we said it was gonna come back up in this section? There was a section that said that, it didn't say that teachers should not go use social media in the classroom. So we said we were going to address it in this section somewhere. So we purchased an app for our teachers to contact our students, and we talked about making sure that they understand that's the priority of the district, which is why we bought it, to use this particular app that we have, Apogee. I don't see it anywhere in here, and I know that we talked about pulling it out and talking about it with 9,000, or this section, I guess. Yeah, 7,000, web content, apps, and services.
So it was policy 1213, 3213, and 4213, and we did add the word inappropriately before the word discouraged. So administrators are discouraged from engaging or shall not engage students in social media and online networking media such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And so we use the term inappropriately before the word discouraging.
What the board member's referring to, because I remember the conversation, is the district-approved platform, that language, like where.
Okay. Right here.
Where is that language?
So it's not in here, but it says board specified website, app, or service. And then we cross out e.g. progressive book. So.
I literally need some help because I was trying to remember
It would be.
Yeah, it's important that it's there.
that we have support for what we bought. That's what I was looking for.
Which one was it?
So it's page 64, and we crossed out, oh God, hold on. So under 1, 2, 3 on page 64, the middle of the page, if you go under staff members are prohibited from requiring students to go to the staff members' personal web pages, sites, including but not limited to their Facebook, all that. But that one above that, it says board specified website, app, or service for the purpose of conveying information and/or students. So we just didn't list the name, but we said board specified. So we can add Apogee to that.
I don't know if we would want to
Or
add that.
because we could change it, that's right.
I think that covers us, that people have to use the app, if that's the question.
And then that second that paragraph underneath it, that covers the social media that we were discussing.
Yep.
Are you okay with that verbiage?
Yeah, it was hard reading through this because really it was, I know it's all law probably, and it was just very so non-specific, right? It almost seemed like if you read all of this language, that teachers can really just do whatever they want when it comes to social media. I'll give you an example. It might be, I'm sorry, it might be in the next policy, but there was an example. This is all technology. Maybe it's in 7540.03, student internet safety. We struck out language that said students are prohibited from accessing.
Hold on, what are you on?
All of this is kind of combined in like a
Okay,
big.
well, hold on 1 second. Are you okay with this verbiage?
Yeah, that would be okay.
Because this covers us, like, saying you can't be inappropriate. They can't do what they want, and they actually have
Have
to
the
follow
board.
what we approve.
No.
So that verbiage is okay.
I would say okay.
Okay,
yeah.
so what is the next one?
Well,
Sorry,
I'm not
trying
sure
to
where it
stay-
belongs. It's either this is all the technology section. It might be, I have this page pulled out of 7540.01 is technology privacy. And then the next one has a whole bunch of statute. It would be 7540.03, student internet safety and acceptable use.
So
And-
what do you want to change on technology privacy? The 7540.01. What was the issue?
I don't need it, I wanted to just make sure that our language was matching from the one that we just, and it is. It was just explained that it's.
Okay.
So that part is fine. We struck out on 7540.03 the following. It says if language about social media is added to policy 7540, it is recommended language be added here, but students are prohibited from accessing social media platforms through the use of internet access provided by the district unless expressly directed by a teacher. The use of TikTok platform or any successor platform is prohibited on district-owned devices through internet access provided by the district as a platform, communicate or promote any district school, school-sponsored clubs. So we struck out, this part here is the part that actually says just don't do it, right? Students are prohibited from accessing social media, it's hard to read with the line through it, platforms through the use of internet access provided by the district unless directed by a teacher. I say we save it, but take out the directed by a teacher.
So it's addressed in 7544, use of social media.
This language exactly?
It's pretty close if you look at that first page of 75.
What number was the other one? Because this said,
You said 7544?
See if that does. That's what you like.
Yeah, that's in there.
well, this is under acceptable use, and it's clearly not acceptable for students to be getting on our stuff going to TikTok. So I think this example here fits under student internet safety and acceptable use. What was the other policy?
7544.
7544.
Page 87. I mean, you could put C policy 7544
7544.
if you wanted to there.
Well, I think that there needs to be some kind of strong language under acceptable use. This is use of social media.
So you want to put students are prohibited from accessing social media platforms through the use of internet access provided by the district,
Yes.
period.
We probably don't need the unless expressly directed by a teacher portion.
Or so.
Yeah, I would just say we shouldn't allow them to do that, go to their, I mean, that's definitely unacceptable use of a district device is to go to social media platforms.
Against the law, sure.
Huh?
Against the law.
Yeah, so maybe we leave the language. I don't know what you guys think about that, but this is under the right section, acceptable use.
Okay, so you want to take out unless expressly directed by a teacher solely for educational purposes, or you want to leave that?
Well, we're telling them we need to use Apogee, right, and use district approved. So as a teacher, one of the most frustrating things was if you want to use a website, it has to be approved, right? And so students are prohibited, they should be prohibited, but what if a teacher found something that was approved by the district? You'll have to help me on this. If a teacher found a website that was, you sent it in to see if you could get approval from the district, if we put expressly directed by a teacher solely for educational purposes, they wouldn't be able to use it, right? An educational site if it was approved by the district. So students shouldn't be, yeah, student use, they should not be allowed. I'm fine with cutting out the rest of it, it's just they shouldn't be doing that on a district device.
Well, the last part of that sentence,
Oh, I see.
okay, so the second sentence, the use of the TikTok platform or any successive platform is prohibited on district-owned devices through internet access provided by the district. And I think it should stop there because you can't say that a student can't use it as a platform to communicate or promote a
Okay.
district school event, school-sponsored club, extracurricular, or athletic team. Like, a student can do that at home if they want to.
Yes.
Like, I don't have a problem with that.
I'm okay with stopping it there.
Because I don't think we can get into what they can or can't do.
So do we want to leave the teacher part?
That's the part I was talking about, for
That's
the
why-
teacher part.
That's where I'm at.
I'm good with the
Before
endpoint that was just pointed out, Madam Chair.
Okay, so you want to stop at provided by, or you want to stop at, provided by the district,
Yeah.
period.
Correct.
But then do you want to keep the teacher part?
That's the part I need to find out.
I don't think we need that part personally because I have yet to see a
Yeah.
social media platform that's educational, so
Yeah.
I think that's fine to.
I believe the statute says, was it 16, can't access social media, is that what that?
So then do we keep it all up into the end or as a platform? Where did you say that you thought it would be okay to end it? What part?
So instead of saying, having so you have the use of the TikTok platform or any successor platform is prohibited on district-owned devices or through internet access provided by the district, period.
Neola, do you have that? Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So do we have consensus for that verbiage? To put that back in?
And then strike where it says, unless expressly directed by a teacher solely for educational purposes. We don't need that portion of the sentence.
We're talking about 7540.04.
No.
Or the 4403. Okay, so
This is
it's
student
struck
use.
From this 04. And
So
then,
students
oh, I'm sorry, by 03.
So she's saying from students all the way, take out unless expressly directed by a teacher for educational purposes. She wants that, we want that struck out.
Include and the use of TikTok. Keep that struck.
No,
The use of the TikTok platform all the way to provided by the district,
period.
period. Keep that. But from or all the way down to the last sentence, or the last to the period, we don't want.
Because this is the student appropriate use section, so we don't need to talk about teachers in this section.
So do we have consensus on that? Without objection, we're gonna move forward with that verbiage.
If a teacher wants to use it in a classroom and they're, putting it up on the smartboard and they're in control of it, to me, that's a different ballgame than a teacher asking students to get onto a social media platform as a class because you don't have as much control as a teacher in that circumstance.
So we're good with that?
Yes.
Okay. Neola, did we understand? Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted to make sure you understood. Okay. So is there any more in this section all the way to the end of 7,000?
On page 79, I just have a question.
What number is that one?
Page 79, 7540.06, not really looking for any changes, I just have a question. I know we went to student numbers a long time ago. Is there any breach of technology or security if a student sends an email to just anybody and their student number is on that? Would that ever be a problem at any time if students email an outside? Do you all see any reason that's
No, the student number is part of the directory information.
okay? It is no longer, I remember when I first started teaching, it had different, but now a student number, if they emailed something from school to anybody, having that student number would affect them in no negative way.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. And last week's.
Well, I have one more thing.
Oh.
Only one more, I promise. It's under artificial intelligence, which would be the new policy 7540.08. So we struck out a lot of language on this, and I'm going to tell you, I went to some trainings on artificial intelligence, in particular its effects and of misuse in education, and it's beyond like copyright problems and creativity problems. So one of the most recent fads with AI are kids taking the faces of a student and putting them sexting the student to other students by putting a fake body onto a head, right? So this is going on all around the country. Students are very creative, right? And I'm not saying we would have that problem, but what we've done is we have taken the language that I know Neola spent a lot of time with a lot of lawyers trying to figure out where education should be with AI. And so things that we struck out, which are clarifying, and I can tell you AI is a great thing, but it's also a terrible thing. It could become our best friend or our worst nightmare. And so when we're talking about AI, we crossed off any use of artificial intelligent technology in the district's educational program or operations must be in accordance with state and federal law. I say we keep the language of the law and this very lawyer-type language in here until we have training and are better suited to make decisions. I trust the language Neola used, and I know that you guys spent some time developing this language for a reason. The second part, student use of AI, was taken out. Utilization of AI tools is strictly prohibited for the completion of schoolwork. The use of AI tools without express permission, consent of a teacher. We need to leave that language in there. We can always come back to this when we are more up to snuff and we've had appropriate training on the direction of AI in education. But until that time, notwithstanding, it says the preceding students can use AI tools in the school setting if they receive prior permission from their teacher. Right now, the teachers are going to be our best defense against AI. They are. And so I am saying that we leave the language. Now, I'm not sure about one part of the language. It says the superintendent is authorized to support the use of artificial technology when it is in use consistent with the district's mission. I would like the superintendent to have that authority until a future time when we actually dive into this type of activity with our students, because that gives him the ability to turn things down or approve things as time goes, right, as we discover more and more about AI. So I would say leave Neola's policy exactly as it is. If we end up having a problem with it, right now it is our only direction, and we could bring it up and we could work on it again in the future.
Do I have a consensus to leave all the verbiage?
Let's hear from Keith and his crew. I mean, what Guy doesn't realize is that we have met several times, we have a task force, maybe just kind of outline today's not the day to do the whiz-bang presentation, but just in general, what's happening with AI.
Yeah, so we've been, for the past year, we've been getting a group of school leaders and educators together to kind of talk about how AI is getting out there. It's something that we can't ignore, so how are we going to do that? We've had several meetings where we've talked about what tools are out there and what's available, and what we're looking at are those tools that are going to be safe in an educational environment. One in particular is Google Gemini, which is available to us. We've been working with Google to make sure that that AI environment is one that is going to be safe for kids, and also that it is not going to be learning off of the input that we put into that. So it's going to, we're working on creating the safest environment that we can for that. So what we've talked about is kind of a slow rollout where we first get training for teachers. This next year will be, once we have policies in place, then we'll be able to expose our teachers, get training for them on the tools that we're going to have available for them. And then as the teachers are comfortable with using these technologies, also having the students involved in that. AI is something that's, we know is not going to go away, so we want to train for it and be ready for it.
So I just want to give you a brief, I
Yeah.
have no problem with adding all the language.
So the
back.
language,
Because
and
that's
I
an object
agree.
to what you're saying.
Yeah, no.
That actually protects what you're saying, so it gives us the
Yes.
ability to eventually, after it's approved, to be able to utilize it. But it also prevents kids from bullying, harassment, all of those things.
Plagiarism.
So let's, if there's no objection, let's add the policy back to its original format. Are we okay with that? All right, so anything else in this section?
No.
All right, let's move on to $8. And let's do the first 50 pages of $8. It's gonna go to 8,400.
I have just a question on 8,300. And I think it's page 13. So we struck out when it comes to the safety and security preparedness manual. Says, and I'm not sure that it needs to be in this words, but we struck out the superintendent shall recommend the safety and security preparedness manual. I think that's what we're referring to in this. Recommend for school board review and approval. The manual shall be considered a confidential document to release under state public records laws according, I mean, the school board is the people, we're the ones mentioned in law as having, responsibility and authority over safety and security. I'm not sure he has to recommend the whole thing to us for school board review and approval, but I like the fact that we would come together and talk about this manual. And here it says, we struck out the part that says he could recommend it for school board review. I think we need to be in on this. I think we need to be able to have conversation and do some sort of review about our security and safety manual. We're not experts, so one, that would help us better understand what's happening operationally. I'm not sure that we need to have it for approval. I don't know what we need to do, I just don't like the fact that we struck it out.
I can speak to that a little bit. So the main reason I struck that out was just the ability to adapt it and have some flexibility throughout the year as we need to change certain processes and procedures to make us safe. I have no hesitation if we wanted to incorporate that into one of our shade meetings to where we can have some conversations about what our policies and procedures manual looks like and some of the standard operating procedures and all of those sorts of things. And we just have never brought it forward for a public review or approval in the past.
So could we leave it at school board review and it be done in our shade meetings when you do your review of our safety and security? And approval? I mean, every time you do a review with us, we give you our approval. I mean, you're the expert, right? So I just would like to be able to have that conversation and see what it is you are preparing. I don't want to hinder you from being able to make last minute changes with legislation, which is coming out. But is there a wording or a way that we could get that in there where the school board gets to review it and ask questions?
So yeah, I think we could do that. I think the perfect time for that would be the beginning of the year when we review kind of the FSAT findings that we normally go over with you, the first meeting that we have. So, I mean, I would be fine with, honestly, it would probably be the school safety specialist shall recommend the, safety and security preparedness manual for school board review, and just leave it at that. And then we have that conversation in the shade meeting because, obviously it's not for release under public record, so.
Right.
I would be fine with that.
I have a question. And in policy 8141, under parental notification.
Hold on, we gotta finish this one. Hold on.
Real
Okay.
quick.
So what is the verbiage you want?
I would say, the school safety specialist shall recommend safety and security prepared.
I would leave it as superintendent.
You want to leave it
With the big S, which
Okay.
would imply,
or designate?
in case
Okay.
there's a different position that refers to the board.
Sure. Okay, so the superintendent shall recommend the safety and security manual for school board review, period.
And
then
leave the
you-
part that the manual shall be considered a confidential
Correct,
document.
yes, ma'am.
So the only thing we would be striking out would be and approval.
So instead of a recommendation, it would be a provision. So just say that you'll provide the manual.
Okay.
What is it?
Instead of it being a recommendation, because we're not approving or disapproving,
Yeah.
it
The
would just be
superintendent shall provide.
provide.
Yeah, I think that would work.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have consensus for that verbiage? Neola, are you good?
That's good.
Okay. The first 50, what did you say?
Yeah, in policy 8141, under parental notification, alleged misconduct, we struck the C, option C, the sanction imposed by the district against the employee should be, the parents should be notified about the sanction, the district took against that employee who had misconduct.
So that one is because the discipline of employees is confidential. So that is why that one was struck.
I'm sorry, Mr. Alvaro, what policy are we looking at?
8141,
8141?
yeah. The first part.
Okay. Then we struck out D.
C.
And did you want to say anything?
If he has any questions, we do hold it confidential, just like we hold student discipline in confidence. We hold employee discipline in confidence
Is that by law or by choice?
by choice. But just like when y'all do the special actions, they have the right to do a public records request after 10 days. There is a law that 10 days it's held. It's shrouded for those 10 days, but after that, it can become public information.
Yeah, I'm just concerned about the parents wanting to know the consequences of that misconduct, and they're always thinking that we don't do anything about it.
I think that there's a point to be made there, especially since this is talking specifically about engaging in or soliciting sexual, romantic, lewd conduct with a student.
Yes.
So I think if we provided, not just that, yes, it happened, and whether we reported it, but also this is what we're
The
doing to
consequences.
protect students from this person.
Right, sometimes when it's that serious of a item, it's always sent to professional practices. And professional practices, under their investigation, has requested that we not put out information. And they will not also, if someone calls them, they will not give information until their investigation is over.
10 days
So there's a lot of things involved, but like I said, for those items, for discipline that goes to the board, for any suspension, things along that line, after 10 days, it is public information that they can receive. We don't give it to them up front because we wait for the 10 days. Perhaps Mr. Steinmetz could address the 10 days.
Right.
Can we notify the parents after the 10 days then? That we took measures, that we...
Do you want to leave C? Is that what you're asking to leave?
Yeah,
So
I want
some
the
districts
parents
keep
to
this
know that we
language.
did something about,
Well, it's legal. We
It's
can
legal,
keep it
this
if we want.
language.
If the board wants to keep it, we can keep it, and after, we'll follow the proper HR protocol as far as the legal legalities of it. So if we want to keep this, we can keep it.
We do inform them that after 10 days, if they want to make a public records request, that they can do that.
So do we have board consensus to keep C?
It's kind of the same reason we don't read the names, y'all don't read the names at the board meetings. You don't discuss it, you vote privately.
Right. I just
Some
think that
boards
this-
do announce all that at their board
Right.
meetings, but we kind of do that to respect our
So
employees.
I
think
agree.
for this scenario is what they are emphasizing, that the parent has a right to know, is
Correct.
what they're emphasizing for this, because it's only for this in this section, right here.
And it
It's
is
not for
legal
all
language.
employees or all situations, it's only for
Sexual conduct with a
sexual
student.
conduct.
Well, not only that, it says it could include that.
Right.
It says all employees are required to report alleged misconduct which affects the health, safety, or welfare, which is kind of a broad
That's
range.
stricken though.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
part got struck out. So if you
saying-
leave that stricken and you instead say within 30 days, which is what it's already in there.
Different place, it's not structured.
Yeah, that was.
So our red line, it's struck out, and then it says that involves engaging in or soliciting
Oh,
sexual,
sexual,
romantic,
romantic.
lewd conduct. So it would literally only qualify that.
For this
Because it-
specific instance.
Because at that point, that person, if it's, this is 30 days of the date that you've learned that this has happened, like it's been discovered, it's not an allegation.
They're gonna be gone.
Right, but to my point, like, if you have been legally proven guilty of this, you're considered a predator. And so, to me, notifying the parents, this is what we're doing to protect your child from a predator who was once an employee, I think that's appropriate. Just for that particular.
So board consensus to leave C.
Yes.
Okay, Neola, you have C at Riata? Okay. Any others in the first 50 pages? My red line somehow got all messed up. Okay, so let's do the next 50. 50 to 100.
Just some housekeeping under 8407. The line in the first paragraph, after law enforcement agencies, security agencies was stricken, but it's still in there. In
Page 67.
page 67.
Say one more time, Beth, on this part.
On page 67, the first paragraph for 8407 safe school officers, it's just some housekeeping. It says, the district shall partner with local law enforcement agencies and security agencies was stricken, but it's left in the verbiage.
Oh, yeah.
What's the number?
8407.
Okay.
So we have that. Any others for the first, or for 50 to 100? It's gonna go to 8475 policy.
I have just a question on 8410, which is 71, page 71. It would be second paragraph. The superintendent may promulgate administrative, excuse me if I said that wrong, administrative procedures for responding to a critical incident, event. We chose may. Why did we choose may instead of, it just seems like something the superintendent would do versus shall. I mean, you're going to have administrative procedures for responding to a critical incident, right?
Yes, this is dealing with mental health, critical incidents, so there are procedures for how we handle that.
So are we okay with?
She wants to know why does it say may instead of, essentially, instead of giving you the option, she wants to make sure it says shall. She wants you to do the procedures.
I would think he would already have one.
May versus shall. So do we want to change the verbiage to shall?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so, Neola, can the board consensus to change the superintendent shall versus may? Any other further?
Maybe this is a question for Neola. 8462, page 93. it'd be the last paragraph.
Which one is?
8462, page 93, the last paragraph. And this is a policy that it's taking place of another policy which I had a problem with, our school board policy. It says further, any person including teachers, administrators, support personnel, and other district and school personnel who knows or has reasonable cause to suspect that a child or a student is the victim of childhood sexual abuse or the victim of a known suspected juvenile sex offender shall report such knowledge or suspicion to the Department of Children and Families in a manner prescribed by law. The educational community, teachers, police officers, firemen, but in particular the educational community, by law, are mandatory reporters. You'd be surprised at how many young, newer people I talk to that do not understand families in a manner prescribed by law. Is there a reason, since they are mandatory reporters, that we can't explain that in the policy? That you are required, if you think a child was abused, to mandatory report versus just saying prescribed by law?
There's a hotline, you can put that number in there. Would that help?
Huh?
Put the hotline number in there?
Something, I just feel like the policy, every person in the educational community needs to know, it's not an option. I've had a mandatory report, it is not fun, but it's also not an option. And by saying prescribed by law, at this point, watching our legislators work, I am not sure what law is anymore when it comes to certain things. I just feel like we could simplify this, because if you think this is happening, you need to pick up a phone.
So you could say, shall report such knowledge or suspicion to the Department of Children and Families through the hotline number?
Yeah.
Or there's
As a
also-
mandatory reporter, something.
You don't have to say that, but
Yeah.
you can also put the hyperlink to the website, because you can report it online as well.
Well, what do you guys think about that?
Madam Chair, can I share a little light? It's also it's in the handbook. We also have the actual flyer in the handbook. It also is posted in every workroom. And it is gone over at pre-employment. It is gone over when the principals there during the pre-planning, that teachers are mandatory reporters, and explain what they are to report on. So it's in numerous areas where, like I said, we're required by law to post the posters.
But we could put the link here to make sure that we're all on the same sheet of music.
Right, so I just
I
wanted
know
you to
you
know
do all
that
that.
they are made aware that every single employee, whether they're a classroom teacher or custodian or cafeteria worker, they're all mandatory reporters, and they have the link, and they have to report. We also go over it with principals, because they can't tell the principal this happened, and I want you to call DCF. It's the person who it was either spoken to or witnessed the event that is the mandatory reporter.
And I appreciate that. It was the same way. I just feel like we needed to mention it in the policy as well.
So do we have consensus to add the hotline?
I want the hotline and the website, just because sometimes teachers are not in a place where they can have a quiet conversation, and
So can we add the hotline and the hyperlink? We have consensus on that? Alrighty, so Neola, if you will add the hotline and the hyperlink. And I have a question on 8470, which is 97. So I got a question, as far as registered sexual predators, do we let parents know? Because that's exactly what this policy essentially says. And we don't have it's crossed out that they don't have a book, a binder per se, but what?
So in our discussions on this one, it seemed like this was kind of an outdated, even as the sexual predator website that they go to for this information, and having a binder on campus seemed to be kind of a relic of the past. But yes, anything the sheriff's department provides to us, we make available publicly at schools.
How? How do we make it public?
It's, well, to be honest, we don't get a whole lot of information from them on that, because I think they do their public notification through the websites.
It's just why we run them through every time there's somebody that comes up.
Which is through the routing process.
But if a sexual predator has a kid that attends the school, are we legally allowed to know if and when that person is around, AKA my child?
I mean, that'd be a question for the lawyers.
Is that something that, I know we take precautions, but
Right.
as far as like, let's just say, I mean, I don't know. I don't really know what I'm asking here. I just don't,
The law mandates that they have to stay a certain feet away from educational facilities, right?
not
For
all.
predators?
If they have a child there, they have the right to be able to pick up, drop off, and attend activities of their child, but it ends there. Some parents are allowed, you go through the certain background checks.
They need to
Background check,
be,
they have to be supervised usually.
they need to be escorted, right?
Hmm?
They need to be escorted.
Mhm.
Is that a
There's
law that they have to be escorted if on campus?
Yes, because the Florida statute allows them to attend their child's events and things, but if they're on campus, they are escorted because that would be outside the bounds of what they're allowed to do under the sexual predator regulations under Florida statute.
So who do we have in place that would escort them? Do we have
So
just,
we have strong procedures in place that school administrators know that when a parent comes and checks in and that Raptor pings them as a sexual offender, then the front desk secretary knows to have them wait for the front office person, they notify the principal. The principal will then verify that they have legitimate business to attend to and create a plan to make sure that they are always under our careful supervision while on campus. And most of the time when we have an award ceremony or something along those lines, it's all worked out ahead of time, to where there's a very, very clear plan in place for those types of situations.
And those kind of things would be covered when you guys get along to all the procedures that go with policy, right?
all right, the next 50. No, oh, yes, it does, you're correct. Anything from the, to the end?
I want to have something on 8600, transportation. So we struck out all of the language in option 2, part of the language from option 1. This is talking about revenue collected from violations detected through the use of the district system. I don't have a problem with the fact, I think we struck it out, this entire section about buses, signage on school buses, notices to the public, because we don't actually have these type of detection services on our bus at this time. I think this is why we struck it out. But we should keep the language in the event. So what this is a system, I don't know if anybody else knows about this, districts use the system where it detects if someone runs a red stop sign when it's out, right, or tries to pass on a shoulder when the kids are getting out of the bus. This is actually the language we would need to use a detection event system on a bus. Many, many districts use this, and so I don't know if we cross it out because we have no intention on doing it, or I'm not sure what happened in this section, because what if we do it one day?
So we can always bring the policy back. If that is something that is pursued, then you can always bring this
That
back.
language will be retained.
Bring the
in
language
archive.
back,
We'll
but
have all
since we
that.
don't currently do that, we did not include the language.
It's essentially a mute point, because we don't have it. It's just like,
But the language is permanently maintained by Neil Rand archives.
So in the event that if we did something like that to protect our kids, we just go back and add that portion? All right, then that was my only question.
I have a question, 8600. What are driving experience of the bus driver when you hire them? They mark out the years, 5 years license driving experience. So we have any limit, or we hire just a bus driver that just got a license?
There's state and federal law that prescribes the qualifications that bus drivers must have. which includes not only the driving piece of it, getting, of course, the appropriate licensure for it, but also the drug test, there's also physical that goes with them to qualify.
CDL, like you have to have a certain driver's license.
Yeah.
Sometimes we purchase that for them. And the safe background.
I know that there's a lot of companies don't hire a CDL driver if you don't have a year of experience driving some type of.
Ms. Bryce, she can speak to
So
that.
part of the reason we crossed it out here is because we have it in the job description, it's as well as in the Florida statute. So if statute ever changed, we wouldn't have to go back and take our policy back to the board to change it. We would just be referencing statute. So if qualifications for whatever reason increased, we had to do 10 years instead of 5. Our policy said 5. I mean, statute would always supersede, but we just wanted the flexibility to say, we're going to follow whatever statute says. So that's why, but I mean, we can certainly put it in.
Well, my concern is that we don't want to put just anybody to drive the bus.
Right.
30 or 40 of our children, they don't have experience driving a
Sure.
big bus.
Sure.
It's a safety hazard.
I think they also have to go through courses, right? When you get your CDL and stuff, they
There's
have
also
to.
training that they
Yeah.
go through with a supervised person, a mentor, for example, with no students on, and then, so there's a training person plan to get them up to snuff before they're on the road.
I
Not
believe
not everybody that goes in and attempts to become a bus driver becomes a bus driver. I think in this last class, the majority of people didn't successfully go through the requirements.
I believe we also put a hyperlink in the policy to the job description, so that anybody who's reading policy could go to the job description and see what we're asking for.
Thank you.
Anything more to the end?
I just have one last thing. 8800, page 151. So we struck out 2 paragraphs. We kept part of the second paragraph. And this has to do with religious and other ceremonies and observances.
What was this?
8800,
151.
page 151. So once again, I feel like this is our examples and our non-examples of what is allowed. This is viewed differently, probably on extremes by different people, so if you, from the constitutionalists all the way to someone who attends church every Sunday, there are different viewpoints on religious, what should and should not happen at schools. We actually crossed off the part that kind of defines what is acceptable at a school. So it says, as public employees while on duty and acting within the scope of the employment of pursuant to official duties as opposed to in their capacity as private citizens, district staff members shall not use prayer, religious readings, religious symbols as a devotional exercise or in an act of worship or celebration. We should not be doing that. Staff are expected to avoid circumstances where the staff member's expression of religious views could be reasonably construed as an endorsement or approval of the message by the school or district. Nothing in this policy or its application shall serve to prohibit or interfere with any staff member's free exercise of their religious views in circumstances not covered by this policy. So in the second paragraph, it says nothing in this policy prohibits teaching about various religions and religious practices in a manner consistent with any adopted district course curriculum. We struck out, the instruction may include discussion of religious holidays and customs in a manner related to the curriculum that does not give the appearance of an endorsement as one religion over other religions or favoring either a system or religious beliefs of other beliefs, such as atheism or agnosticism. Observance of religious holidays through devotional exercise or acts of worship is prohibited. In the classroom, teachers should not probably be professing their religion. So I feel like we need to, in our policy, explain what is allowed and what's not allowed in an educational classroom. Do you guys have any input on this?
So I have no problem with adding the language back. I think when you look at it, I think one of the reasons why some things are struck and others aren't is because the first paragraph kind of implies that, but you want more specificity, which is totally fine. I think at the end, one of my little data, somewhat a data nerd, is to look up how many pages of policy through the year that we have done, because I bet you it's well over 1,000 pages. So sometimes you're trying to condense the language, but if you want to expand it there, let's expand it.
Well, I think paragraph 1, it looks like it's towards district personnel, the first one that was scratched. I in particular would like to keep the second paragraph that explains the instructional curriculum piece, because there are some things that are allowed to be taught and some things that are not in the curriculum, right?
Yep.
So I would say we just include back the language in the second paragraph about the instruction may include discussion, because it kind of specifies the direction that educators should be going towards. What?
I disagree. I like the policy as presented with that language stricken.
Without anything struck? I'm okay with that
No, with it
too.
struck. I want it struck.
You want it all struck?
She wants it how it was presented.
Yeah.
So you're wanting to keep it the same as
presented.
As the clean copy?
No. Yes, as the clean copy.
As the clean copy. I don't have a problem with whatever you guys decide.
And I thought we were still doing baccalaureate services. Are they just not sanctioned by the school? Is it sponsored?
School, but yes.
Okay.
That's still correct.
Okay. Is it against state statute to sanction a baccalaureate service?
I would defer to the attorney.
I'll have to get back to you on that question. That's the first time that's come up in front of me. I'll make a note of it.
Okay,
and
because
answer that later.
I mean, we've always done them. I don't, if we can endorse them, I would endorse them. But obviously, I'll follow the law on that.
So you're in favor of leaving the language as presented? with
As
the
presented with the strikes, correct. In my opinion, that more closely protects the religious freedoms of our teachers and our students,
That's what I was thinking. I think it
instead of limiting them.
because then they're gonna read this, and whether they're allowed to do it or not, they're gonna be too scared or misunderstand the verbiage, or, I agree with Ms. Gilhausen on this one.
I don't have a problem with it. I just know it gets tricky sometimes.
Right.
When it comes to the curriculum.
It
Has
does. It
nothing
does
to
get
do with my
tricky.
personal belief at all. It's just sometimes some direction when it comes to the parameters of what a state statute or about our standards say. So I'm okay with either way. I just know as a teacher, sometimes it gets a little tricky when you're looking at a standard and interpretation of that standard, so.
So you, Madam Chair?
I do have a question though about this. You know how I feel. Why do the celebration activities involving non-religious decorations and use of secular, are we referring to like the Easter Bunny, Santa Claus and stuff here? And celebrating like Easter egg hunts and when we're looking at,
Halloween, decoration.
just Halloween?
Well, that'd be an
Not
example.
like, so, cause we do, trunk or treat, we do, I guess we don't do egg hunts anymore.
I think it's just not necessary language.
Is that what I'm, okay, but they're allowed, because it gives them permission to do it. But for some reason, schools think they're not allowed to do it,
To do what?
like egg hunts or trunk or treats or.
Schools do that. I don't think they think they're not allowed. It might just be a preference by the school leadership.
They say they have to be very careful, and they just encourage.
There is
not
some
to do it.
confusion,
There is-
because there's standards, right? Is an event like that a part of the direction in which the state wishes us to go when it comes to educational time? So I think there's some confusion because it's supposed to be educational when you're at school, and I think,
A lot of times activities are stopped because they want to focus on instructional time, not on whatever the activity is.
Right.
but I don't think they're prohibited. I mean, if they find a creative way to
Well, that's what I'm saying.
do something enjoying
Could-
along with education.
I know the verbiage is kind of sticky, but
I would leave that up to the school leader personally.
well, can we let them know they're allowed to have Christmas parties and egg hunts, and they can make it educational?
Something for our newsletter.
Like-
That
Like my
makes it.
4-year-old had, or my 5-year-old had an egg hunt, and she had to find her name, right? So she had to identify the spelling of her name, and that's how they did their egg hunt. So we can make it educational. I'm just saying that.
It doesn't prohibit it, this language?
I just want our kids, no, it says you're allowed to, but we've crossed it out. So that's why there's confusion. I don't know, I think that sometimes, and this is coming from my 7-year-old, okay? That sometimes we take away the fun. And their mom's a very big person when it comes to holidays of fun, so maybe it's partly my fault. But they get excited about these things, and I just don't want to take that away from our kids. And I want schools to realize that they have the ability to do this, and it's not.
It's also.
I just want it
also
communicated.
about parental involvement too, and bring the parents back to the schools.
Right,
That's
and
what
then
we're
like,
talking about.
I mean, I know a lot of PTAs across the state, actually, I say state because I know several of them that implement all of this. And if we need to make it for educational purposes, like I said, kindergarten can do a math problem to find an egg. I mean, I don't care, and I know at some point we cut off egg hunts, but I'm just saying, I know this is kind of excessive for this topic, but I just want people to know that they're allowed to do this, is all I'm saying. And that we put more fun back in our schools. So if we can verbally relay that message. Is there any more?
I just had a paper that fell out. I don't know which section it fell out of. I just have a question for the superintendent. We talked about putting smoking, like everything you already do, and we left that language in the policy. This is, and I'm pretty sure it was in this last section, it says the superintendent shall post notices of entrance of school buildings and areas in the building where visitors are required to report. It's basically about handguns, right, carrying guns on campus, like we have that white sign out there. We have signage at each school for that,
Yes.
that says it's prohibited, right, by state law. Does it talk about, like, do we have, I guess to add on to that, when you see a young child bring a knife to school, like, does it have like other weapons on those signages?
No, it's very specific, it's a gun-free zone kind of thing.
And so,
I think the cure there is more training at the beginning of the year.
with the kids?
Particularly the elementary school students related to the knife.
Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about, yeah.
Exactly.
The weapons are more than guns, and so maybe we can do it through training?
The sign says anything that's recognized under chapter 790, which is anything, chapter 790 defines any weapons.
Yeah, nobody knows what chapter 790 is. If we had a little picture of a knife, they'd be like, oh, I should go put my knife back in the car. But chapter 790 doesn't do anything for me. I'm not even sure what the interpretation is sometimes, you know, there's a little leeway in there on interpretation. But thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
Okay, so before we move on to bylaws, does anybody have any things for 9211, which is the booster clubs and other outside sport organizations? That's the one that was kind of separate.
I don't have anything. Why was it sent separate? Was it,
Because I personally had asked Mr. Broski to attach this one and another one that we're gonna do in June.
yes.
So they're kind of combined.
This one's
It was 9210 and 9211, and so that would be like a Neola thing, and so other districts that had previously adopted them, these were two separate policies.
correct.
Then they took the text, and so like, it was like parent-teacher organizations and then boosters, they put them together because it was so many of the policies and the ideas overlap, so that's kind of like, so having two separate, they put them together into one.
Okay, so I personally, as one board member, would like two separate policies. Because I have had several PTA members from multiple different schools, different groups, different, all over, who have asked me multiple times about a policy for PTA because they've either had conflicting answers, nothing's consistent, one runs very well because leadership is great and they work great together, and another, they're having clashing issues. So I personally would like to see, we can keep this one, I'm fine with this, I've read it, I went over it, but I would like the other one, I think it was 9210. I would like for us to revisit that in June, please.
So Madam Chair, I believe that we should have two separate policies. Because boosters are much like the Clay Education Foundation, you have to have, there's a lot of legalities when it comes to a booster that we don't have in a PTA. And it is a PTA is a much easier process than setting up a booster. And so, under that premise, they should probably be separate, and then under the PTA policy, we could actually uniformly make sure that the PTAs at each school resemble each other in structure and rule. So I think it's better they be separate.
Because there's so many, I'm telling you, every year, and it's not even, some of them are consistent with the same school, but a lot of them are not. And so I just want to make sure
It's
there's.
called a parent organization policy, so, and then Tom, we can look at that and then,
Yeah.
if that is something that the board.
Right, and I mean, not saying that they have to follow it by like, let's give them some leeway and we can look at it and see what it is, because each one runs a little differently, but something for them to fall back on and to reference and look at. And like I said, several of the schools do very good. Fleming Island Elementary has done great with their PTA, Orange Park Elementary, like there's so many examples I can give you that run very well, and then there's others that just need some guidance and assistance. So I would like there to be a separate policy on that if we can. So I'm good with the booster one. Was there any objections to this one? Okay. And then the bylaws. I know we we've already done this, but there were some revisions because of state statute and whatnot. So is there any objections to the new?
Well, there's some choices we have to make.
Okay. Go ahead.
The definitions one, I think, is uncontroversial. They just took out the definition of agreement because you already have the labor agreement in there. And they changed chairman to chair. That's basically all we're talking about. If there's no objection to that.
I have no objection. Do you guys have objections? No.
And then 0131 is the legislative policy making one, and this one just refers to the notices. Is how you do policies, and they have a different way of doing the rules now. Notices of the rules don't have to be advertised in the newspaper. If you have a choice, you can do the newspaper, but you can also do the website instead, which is less expensive.
So when I was in FSBA training about this, they said, yes, the law did change, we could just use our website, but they said it could become problematic for people who, let's say older people who don't go on the internet, have no access to our website, kids without the internet, and so at that training they suggested we just leave both of them on there to cover ourselves? What's your theory about that?
You can have or. You can
Right.
say newspaper or website if you want, that's fine. Do you have a newspaper in this county that's public?
We do, so, one of the thoughts could be that they don't go to the newspaper either, right? So it's, the law allows it, and it's a more economical and efficient way to do it, so.
We have to pay for newspaper space, correct?
It's not cheap.
We're currently doing both newspaper and
I think
website.
if we can save money and just do the website, I think that's fine. Or we could do the old-fashioned way of posting on the courthouse door.
So is there any, I don't know why they were talking about this at the training for the Chairmanship Academy, but is there, if you do just the website, for some reason, they were like, oh, that might be a little bit, what's your theory about doing just the website? You're a group of lawyers.
That's the minimum that's required. And okay, let's differentiate. There's one set of rules for notices of meetings.
Yeah.
Okay? And another set for notices about rule notices.
Yeah.
We're talking here about rule notices. And that's more extensive because you have to post it in appropriate places so that those particular classes of persons to be within the intended action is directed may be duly notified. That's D. That is included. It is required under law. And then by mail to people who have made requests of it. And by posting on the website. You can do the newspaper instead of the website, but I don't think you'd want that. But you could add newspaper in A and just have that and then put an or after that.
And this is talking about just policy making, correct?
This is the rulemaking, yes.
So-
There's another one later on we're going to get to that'll be the notice of the meetings.
So when we notice rulemaking, do we also have to provide the policy in question, or is
Not
it?
in total, you just have to give the title and the reason for it.
I have a question. As someone who's addicted to getting my publishing affidavits from the publication, how do I know? How can I, and I do put it on the website, but how would I ever have to prove that? Because
Can you save a website screenshot? I don't know.
Yeah, this is what
That's
they
a
were
technical
talking about.
once the meetings are over, I go in and I edit and I delete them. So how can I prove that it was ever there?
Ask your IT people, they can save it somehow.
There's always receipts of everything that you do online. Nothing ever goes away. But there's only certain people that know how to get those receipts.
I'm not one.
And I'm not one of them either.
I mean, they made the change to make it more cost effective for us, but there were some issues with the change, they were like, well, what if this happens, what if this happens? So,
would you like to select A for the newspaper and then put or here?
I think or is fine, that gives us the option.
And B, and then and, B, and C, and D. And that would be the complete requirements.
and before I can't imagine anybody hearing.
And on the next page, they're further down, they deleted challenge to existing policy and challenge to proposed policies, just because Neola didn't think it was necessary to include these in the policy. But they're still correct, but they just didn't think it was reasonable to put it in. So if that's okay. Any other questions about that one? Now the next one is 0164, it's the notice of meetings, what I was talking about.
0131.01.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Okay, this one is about technical corrections. Sometimes we talk about technical corrections, and Neola has sort of clarified an option here that you can't, in addition to all these examples in the first paragraph, they've added updating the names of the individuals who serve as district compliance officers, because there's about 12 or 15 policies that have that. And as long as the position remains the same as listed in the school policy. So that would just be a technical change. If somebody replaces somebody else, but the function is still there, the same position. If that's okay, we could include that. And then down below, it says, should the board choose to make technical corrections that may be accomplished by resolution as part of the consent agenda without going through rulemaking? And then there's a new provision, or the superintendent is authorized to identify and undertake technical corrections. And then report it to the school board, and if the board determines that it is substantive, the board will utilize the normal rulemaking procedure. That's an option you can have if you want.
I think that's the option we typically use.
Yeah, I like that one.
So I think that's been our past precedent.
So the last one. Do we have consent?
So it'd come to either the information item or on the consent agenda.
And we're striking the first option?
Yes.
Yeah, no, they want that, don't you?
No, I thought they wanted the second one.
We wanted the superintendent.
We wanted the or, under or.
Right, but the part about updating the names of the individuals?
Oh, yeah, we do need that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they need both options. And the next one, I think, is 0164, notice of regular meetings, hearings, and workshops.
10143. Here's a good example.
Okay, here's a technical correction.
Right.
That's all this is. There's 2 new statutory references added. That's a technical correction. To the
No
policy
substance, big substance,
about
it's giving you
elections.
information.
Okay.
I'm gonna throw this out, I'm just wondering if it's another opportunity for us to add a line or two. Because we are different from the commission here in Clay, unlike our surrounding counties. I mean, do we need to stick just to what the statute says, or can we add a line?
On election?
What I'd like to add is that it be clear that each school board member resides in a separate district, but we do work for we are elected and work for the entire district.
Serve at large.
Because our citizens still don't understand that.
Well, there was a policy on residence areas that
Yeah.
the board chose not to take.
But they
which was-
still think that they only vote if they don't live in our district, they can't vote for us. And I think it's just another educational opportunity.
What policy?
That's fine.
143.
I think it kind of says that. Members of the school board shall be elected in a county-wide election, and once elected, shall represent the entire district.
It just doesn't seem clear
As
enough.
specific as you want it to
Yeah.
be. Each member of the board shall be elected at large, would that be better, or at large in a county-wide election, and once elected, shall represent the entire district?
Reside, homestead, each member in each district, but will represent the entire district.
It's always going to be confusing because number 1 says the county's divided into 5 residences. I mean, that's number 1. They're always like, oh, you're your district, I'm my district, you're your
Right.
district.
And there's gotta be a way to make it a little more clear.
I mean.
Maybe if you just
members
add the
of
words,
school-
they don't just represent their district, like,
But it literally says it, members of the school district shall be elected in a county-wide election, and once
Yeah.
elected, shall represent the entire district.
maybe if you put that.
Maybe entire county versus district, is district what confuses people?
Maybe if you put it number 1, can you switch the order? Just
it
switch the order and put the other one
literally-
underneath?
I don't know how clear, I mean, that's pretty clear.
Because if you just put the 5, from just a teacher aspect, the 5 is an example, like, the county shall be divided into 5 residences, maybe that just goes underneath and it solves our whole problem, because number 1 does say what we are. Like the second one, members of the school board. Can you switch the order?
Sure.
Does that make sense? If that's what you all
want.
It's explaining that number 1's explaining that we're divided into 5 districts, right? We don't want them to focus on that. We want them to focus on that we are elected countywide, right? I don't know how else to fix it.
So maybe if it read, members of the school board shall be elected in a countywide election, and once elected, shall represent the entire district. The county shall be divided into 5 residence areas approximately equal in population, and I mean, to me, that's where you would put, if you're wanting the residential requirement, that's where we go with that sentence.
So just flip them?
Well, Ms. Clark had mentioned something about residential requirements. So you have to live in your district.
You have to homestead.
And that's what we do here. That is the,
You have a little cheating that's trying to.
so Ms. Gilhousen, could you read that one more time? It sounded,
Actually, you don't have to live in that district until elected.
right?
Understand.
So we're making this very complicated.
Okay, I'll drop it.
I'm just
I
trying to make it.
I'm trying to make the citizens, not the citizens.
Well, Ms. Gilhousen read it back and it sounded really nice. Could we just listen to that one more time? And if we don't like it, we'll just,
All I did was reverse the order, like you said.
Yeah.
We can do that.
So what do we,
Because there's so many technicalities when we're sitting here looking at it. I mean, if you're running for office, you're gonna figure this out anyway, but I just think it's gonna start confusing people, because then
They're already confused.
they're gonna be mad because you don't live in your district, but yet you're running for that district, but that's not the requirement anymore. So there's just like law after law after law.
So would it be helpful to flip them around then, just so that?
That's what we were, I'm fine with that, but.
you can put in writing, you put the most important concept first. So the only thing I could see was if you just switch it,
Yeah.
I don't know.
But if you keep it in that order,
Yeah.
if we just change, consider this. The county shall be divided into 5 residence areas approximately equal in population. Members of the school board shall be elected in a countywide election, and once elected, shall reside in their residence area, but represent the entire district.
Oh, I like
Would that be clear?
Yeah,
Clear enough?
that sounds nice.
where is that language?
That
I
sounds-
just made it up.
Just made it up. That sounds great.
Good job. It's our policy, our
Okay,
Your elaborated skills
Okay,
exceed all.
I'll say it slowly.
Do you remember?
So, after it says, and once elected, shall reside
Shall
in their residence area, but represent the entire district.
That's very clear.
Yeah, because that's specifically what our county does.
And it's not us running for election, they're confused, it's the citizens running.
Well, I know, but that's what I'm saying, because then they're gonna go and try to do their own, I just know the rabbit hole that they'll go down, but this is clear.
That's fine.
We just went down there.
Yep.
Are we done with
And
this?
I would keep, I'm sorry, I would keep the county shall be divided first. Because otherwise you're referring to the residence area without defining what a residence area is. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
To do it.
Okay, the next one is 164, notice of regular meetings. And there's a drafting note there that shows you how the legislature does things. There's 2 different statutes. One of them calls for at least 2 days' notice before a school board meeting, and the other one calls for 7 days, at least 7 days. So of course, 7 days is at least 2. So what Neola is recommending is to retain the 7 days. I think that's what you have now, the 7-day notice. Most all districts do that in the state. And even though the school code says at least 2, we go with the 7 for the normal meetings. And then what you have a choice here is for continuous publication on the website, because this drafting note won't be in the policy, that's just for information. The drafting of continuous publication on a publicly accessible website. Obviously, I think you want to do that. And you have an option of publication in the newspaper, or you can do it, or the website, but it's up to you. You don't have to do it in the newspaper.
So what do we add or again?
Okay. After A, you want to select A and then put an or. And then select B. And then I would put a period after B because you have a newspaper, so you don't need that option. And C is that option if you don't have a newspaper. And D and E have been taken out. So the end of it is B. It's either the website or the newspaper. And none of that stuff about posting in appropriate places is required. For notices of meetings, you always can do it, but you don't have to do it. The law doesn't require it. That's the difference between the rulemaking notices and the meeting notice.
Okay. So complicated.
It's kind of astonishing that they have that so difficult to understand what the law is. Yeah. And then the next one is about the meetings. What they've done here, 0165, what Neola did is sort of combine 3 different bylaws into one. Actually, 4 into one. All the meetings now are covered in this new 165, and the regular meetings and the special meetings, and the notice provision for special meetings does require for 2-day advance notice. And the reason for that is the school code does permit that. So that's the recommendation for the special meetings, and then the emergency meetings and whatever is fair under the circumstances. Now there are some options under emergency meetings we need to look at.
Are you guys comfortable with the 2 days for a special meeting? Because we don't typically do that. We typically notice more than 2 days for a special meeting.
You can certainly do 7 if you want.
But what happened during COVID? Didn't you?
So that would be an emergency situation.
So that was emergency. All of the meetings then became emergency? Were there any special meetings?
Anytime we have a special meeting, we always advance notice 7 days. The only time, I don't know that we've ever, I think maybe once I can remember, and I don't remember what the emergency meeting was called for, but we did call an emergency meeting, and it was less notice than.
So do we like the option though for leaving 2, knowing that we don't, that we always try to give 7 just in case we needed it to be less?
To me, if it's a 2-day notice, it's an emergency, personally.
Well, it doesn't matter what we put in policy because statutorily, it's gonna trump it. So if we need the 2 days, I mean, technically for statute, we can use the 2 days.
Well, what it says is that special meetings can be called by the superintendent or the majority of the board by serving a written notice of the time, date, location, and purpose of the meeting upon each board member at least 2 days in advance of the meeting. So that's not exactly the notice of the meeting, that's a sort of an internal notice about what the meeting is going to be about. But you could do a 7-day notice.
I mean, so for example, say you have a board that doesn't get along, or you have a superintendent and a board that are at odds with each other, and a meeting gets called and you're given 2 days notice, this meeting is happening and we're gonna vote because it's a special meeting. Do you see how that could be? Or the public, if you have an issue come up and you wanna vote on it in a matter of 2 days, you're not giving the public a week notice. You know what I'm saying? I just feel like.
And then in this it says that.
To your point though, it doesn't matter because the state statute says 2. So even if we put it in policy, if that board member
It
wants to
says
be
at
there,
least 2.
It says at least 2.
At least 2, that's
So
what I'm
you can make it
saying.
more than that.
So they could technically just go based off the state statute.
You could, but it would be bad practice to go against your own policy.
Well, 7 days is at least 2.
Right.
So
And if the
But
board
what she
specifies 7, if there's any situation where under 7 is needed, those might not be valid actions taken by the board at a special meeting. If it's under 7 but over 2, it might be permissible under statute, but policy would, going against policy in that instance might invalidate the board's decision.
Right. Which I
I'm
think,
just saying, I was just trying to prove the point that we can leave it at 7, but I'm just saying because of state statute,
Are you saying that the action would be invalid?
It could be if the policy is greater than the statute.
The option, what if there was some cataclysmic emergency?
well, that's an emergency meeting.
We really needed to do that.
Yeah, this is not emergency,
This is not an
special.
emergency. This is like, we've
It's a
decided
special
we're gonna
But
change.
that's
Not emergency.
That's what we were essentially saying, but then we were talking about our previous practice.
No, if you had an emergency, you could declare an emergency meeting, absolutely. And I don't think that requires any notice, correct? An emergency meeting, you could.
48 hours. I think.
Well,
Is
it
it
does,
48
you
hours?
said a special meeting does require us to have the information we need at least 2 days prior, right?
No.
So,
The statute requires that the superintendent or the majority of the board give notice at least 2 days, not to the public, but to each board
To each
member.
other.
And the notice is just the time, the date, the location, and the purpose.
Yeah. That's why where the board wanted to have a meeting, the superintendent didn't, or a part of the board.
Right, that's why I feel like 7 days is better than 2, just because if something contentious is coming up, I don't like the option of pulling a 2-day meeting, yeah. I think 7 days is good unless it is absolutely necessary by an emergency situation.
Well, I just hope we never need a special meeting under 7 days.
We shouldn't, I don't think you should.
Yeah.
Because think about it, with a special meeting, you're voting, you're taking action.
Yeah.
And to only give the public and one another 2 days' notice before that, I don't
So
think
whatever
is
you
fair.
guys decide, well, either way,
I would like to stick with our 7.
I mean, it's worked for this board, so.
If we need it, we'll just call an emergency.
So do I hear consensus for 7 days, at least 7
Need it
days?
Around that, is what I'm saying.
So that would be an A, we'll change A, I guess. Oh, no, we can leave that at 2, that's only the notice to the board members.
So say that to me again.
Leave A as it is, and then for paragraph D, due public notice shall consist of at least 7 days prior to the meeting.
I think you have to change the other 2 also, because it's in advance of the meeting. So if you're gonna notify the board, it's also gonna have to be 7 days.
Okay, A, we can change it to say at least 7. And then on emergency meetings, they have a lot of suggestions here for ways to give notice. They're optional. The website is number 1, that is not optional. And then another option would be notify a major newspaper about the emergency meeting. Making an announcement on the radio station.
And just so we're clear, letter A, emergency meetings, defines the prerequisites for an emergency meeting. So for it to be considered an emergency, it has to be an immediate danger to public health, safety, or welfare that requires immediate action.
Right.
So you can't call an emergency meeting
Anything, just anything, yeah.
for just anything.
So would we want number 4, posting a notice on the district-approved social media platform? There's a lot of followers on there. Like on our website and on our social media? If it was an emergency, I mean.
Well, we have that,
We have that new app.
we have the new app and
Or
we
that.
have robocall.
So we have to check something though, right?
These are options.
These are options.
You don't have to have any of them, you can pick what you want.
I don't think the newspaper makes a whole lot of sense, but
You would never
I think
get it.
announcing over the radio, because I'm thinking if it's a weather emergency, people will be watching the news, listening to the news. So
So 3,
I think 3.
and
Anybody?
all 3 of 3?
Um,
I don't know, we do have access to robocalls,
yeah, I think option 3.
Facebook.
So, social media platforms.
And
is
option
what
4
we
would be fine.
So the first check in 3,
Oh, you don't, not this one?
you don't want to do news releases to
Our
print
newspaper
and
doesn't come out.
broadcast.
It doesn't, our newspaper, I don't think is a daily newspaper. The one we advertise in is weekly.
Right.
Wire services, yeah.
So I
Let's
would say,
do 4.
You do not want number 2?
no, we don't.
It won't work for an emergency meeting because they don't go to press but once a week.
Oh, 5?
Wait.
Nobody,
Posting a notice on the front door of the main office.
no.
I think that's reasonable.
And the address?
What is our address?
900 Walnut Street.
Okay. I knew it was something on that.
No, posting a notice on the county courthouse door. You don't have to do that.
That's what we've done in the past.
Okay, do you want to do that?
It's up to you guys, and I know that's kind of an ancient practice.
But we're not doing social media at all.
No, we are. It's 4. She checked it?
We did check 4?
Yeah.
Check 3.
On the second part of 5, do you want on the front door of every school in the district?
I would say no, just because they might be closed if it's an emergency situation.
The last option is posting on the courthouse door.
I don't think that's necessary, personally.
First time I saw that, I laughed. I was like, it's from the back of the horse.
Shall attempt to provide notice as follows. So if you put it here, then you gotta try to do it.
Yeah.
All right, here's the virtual, this is one we need to.
All right, that takes care of emergency meetings. Then
No,
there's
okay, yes.
section on exempt meetings. And then the new section on virtual participation. So this would permit a board member or two to, when they couldn't be present. First sentence is that the board members are expected to attend meetings in person, but
This is the policy we already follow. So
Yeah,
I'm
I know
comfortable
when my
with it.
dad passed, I couldn't come in person.
and the
So
quorum
since-
has to be present here.
Yeah, that's what we do.
So do we check it then? Yeah,
Yes,
it's
I
okay.
think we checked that one.
Okay. That's the end of that one. And the other thing was that if canceling out for the school board meetings, the regular meetings, the special emergency meetings, and exec meetings, putting all those into that one bylaw. And there was a technical change to the agendas. Let me see what that is.
So chair to chair, to
What?
chair from chairman,
Yeah, from chairman to chair. That's all.
that's all.
Okay.
Any questions on policy?
I just have a question about, in it, when, like our board docs, I'm looking at the agendas. So at 7 days before a meeting, automatically, Neola sends us a notice that the agenda's available. Why do they do that? Before a meeting, yeah.
Before a meeting.
Like, so 7 days prior on the
Board
7th
doc
day.
sends that maybe.
Yeah, and
Not-
board
not
doc,
Neola.
not Neola, but why would they do that, send it 7 days prior to a meeting? Is that how many days? I mean, I've been trying to figure out this agenda thing for a while. Because our workshops, we get the agenda on, with 4 days, right? Yeah, so we always, it comes out 3 days before Bonnie's email. I thought maybe it's because it was statutory somewhere that's why they send it out the 7 day prior. We do it on Thursday, they send it out on Tuesday before a meeting. Because when you're looking at agendas, it talks about 7 days prior to an event. 7 days, this includes workshops. I was trying to figure out why they do it. About the agendas.
I don't know, that's just.
Because this says
helpful.
may be received at least 7 days. It doesn't say it has to be received 7 days prior to the event. I guess we don't know.
Complimentary alert.
A complimentary alert for no reason.
Are you all?
It's been doing it for 3 years, so I'm just like, well. I don't have anything else.
Any other comments from the board for policy? Are we able to get, well, we have some of the policies that we need to review, but that review for June, can we get those?
In advance, for sure, and I'll just need to get you to confirm that we're talking about the same ones.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you, Neola.
Yes.
Thank you.
We are, I wanted to talk, do our board discussion really quick. There are, I personally have some things that you need to.
Do you mind if we do
Okay,
a
can I
quick
take a
recess?
5-minute recess? 10 minutes, 5 minutes.
5 minutes.
5 minutes.